My skill as a medical intuitive was probably a natural extension of my whole life. I mean, I was educated by nuns and priests and until I was 29, for God's sake. How many people could say that and survive? Anyway, and in the world I came from, the spiritual side of life was so ordinary that the extraordinary became ordinary. I simply became very attuned, very attuned, very conscious, if you will, of the way people were feeling, and of that I was picking up more than just the average highs or lows that you might pick up from a friend. I mean, you might say, I think there was something wrong with Ginny today or whatever. But in my case, I was able to say, yeah, there's something wrong with Ginny. She's developing a bladder infection. But all of a sudden I thought, I can't even tell you how normal that was. I didn't sit around and say, how did I know that? What happened to me was I said, oh, that's why I've had this energy in me. It's taking this focus.
Carolyn Myss is one of the world's most renowned medical intuitives. She uses a form of second sight to perceive illnesses and their hidden causes. Through thousands of intuitive medical readings, Carolyn discovered that in addition to our physical anatomy, each of us also possesses an energy anatomy, a system of interconnected energy centers, invisible to the eye, but critical to the formation of disease and the process of healing. And now, Carolyn Myss.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And applaud you too. Thank you all for being here. Through the years, I've changed a great deal as a teacher. I think most teachers do. And the reason I have is because my work and my research has taken me down a different path. My work used to be medical intuitive readings on people. And what happened was this incident. And what I would do is I would do these workshops where I would have 60 or 70 people, and I would do a reading on every single person in that workshop. I would leave there in a bucket of sweat, but everybody got their reading. And one day I was doing a workshop, and I sat next to this woman and I said, so what can I do for you? And she sat there like this, and she looked at me and said, I don't know. I paid my money, you tell me. Okay, so being the calm person I am, I looked at her and said, you and I are going to sit here until I figure out some gracious way to deal with that remark. And this may take us a few years, so have your dinner sent in. All right, but what I realized in that moment was that I really didn't help people all that much by doing readings. But that the better way for me to serve people would be by teaching you how to evaluate your own energy, how to recognize when your energy was leaving your body and what the significance of that is, how to recognize when some kind of energy was entering your body, how to know in that instant moment that, whoops, I'm having a power leak, and spot the target that it's leading to. And then what to do about it. I mean, it's not good enough to say, I'm screaming in the middle of the street, I'm leaking, I'm leaking. You know, that's not going to help you. All right. But what do you do about that once that starts, and how to unplug your energy? So I hope that you'll join me today as I teach you the skills I've learned, as I present to you the human energy system as I've learned to work with it. It's the best tool I have to give you. So the next thing people are usually interested in is, how did I become a medical intuitive? You know, I'm very boring in this category of my story. I wish I had a story to tell you, like I had an apparition, or, you know, I had some kind of unusual encounter with an ET, but that's not the truth. The truth is, it was the most natural evolution in my own life. I studied theology. I was educated by nunsies. I love nunsies. And, you know, for nuns, the extraordinary is the ordinary. Okay? I mean, that's just the way it is. And so I had that kind of background. And so when I began to have the insight that I was intuitive and that it was taking the focus as a medical intuitive, meaning that the kind of data I received from people was the information that told me about where they were losing their spirit, their energy, to issues in their life that resulted consequently in the breakdown of their body. That's what I learned, and how to work with that. Then I knew I had a very upsetting moment, because most people will report or share with you that when they emerge into their intuitive abilities, it scared them. That's not what scared me. No, no, no. Because of my background around the nuns, what scared me is that I knew that when people had this kind of ability, they were generally shuffled off to the monastery. That's what scared me. I didn't like the thought of where the rest of my life could lead me, but fortunately for me, it didn't go that direction. So let's get into this. Your human body, your energy body, the way I like to teach it is in terms of giving you the model that you have circuits coming in through the top of your head. And we probably do, okay? And as the circuits come into your head, it of course fills your entire body, helps in the development of cells, helps in the maintenance of your life. And what I really believe that if we could imagine that I was your angel coach and you hadn't yet incarnated, and I'm going to tell you what life on the planet Earth is about. I wonder if we could find the angelic Prozac. But anyway, what I would tell you is, as you prepare for incarnation, what is the purpose? Why are you going down there? This is the reason. You're going down to learn the wise distribution of this energy. Because as you plug your energy into anything, what you give that energy to becomes an investment in the process of life. And that investment gives returns to you and returns to the whole of life. Think of it like investing money. And that every day you're given $100 worth of energy to spend in your life. And that as you invest it, either you're going to invest it in positive circumstances, positive relationships, positive thoughts that will bring high interest returns to your system, or you're going to make investments in which you start building a debt. And eventually the $100 worth of energy that you get every day is not going to be enough to finance your debts. You've got to take a loan. Where are you going to get that loan? You're going to get it from your cell tissue. Or you're going to get it from other people's energy. You develop a kind of a parasitical sense where you need to be around people's energy in a way that's beyond even your consciousness. You don't know why you need this person. You don't know why you need this addiction. But it comes from the fact that you're literally grasping for energy because you're running out. And then at some point, that actually becomes the formation of an illness. So I want you to keep this in your mind, and I also want to point out, as I continue with this, and think of your own energy circuits, because as I discuss and list the many ways you can lose your energy, you know, take note, and don't sit there and say, oh, that's not me. Of course, I would do that, but I don't want you to do that. Okay. What's it look like when your energy leaks? Look at this image. You have energy coming into the top of your head. And when I did a reading on somebody, when I still do them, I use this image. I literally use like a timeline that goes back to the sense of your birth, and then I get a sense of where you're leaking energy and why. One of the favorite places people like to leak their energy is into their childhood. That's very popular. So you send your energy back to years and years ago, into some degree of parental criticism. And what you decide unconsciously, and this is true, is what percentage of your energy goes in that direction. Now I'm going to tell you something. This is absolutely real. And once you start noticing this in yourself, you're really going to be surprised. When you get up in the morning and you run off to the shower and you're showering and you're dressing, I'm telling you something. While you're doing that, you are going through an energy distribution phase. And you're preparing for that day. And if you're holding on to a lot of this historic part of yourself, you are literally taking your $100 worth of energy and saying, okay, give 20 bucks to my childhood, give 30 bucks to the end of that relationship, give 115 bucks to the way I left my last job. So by the time you're done, what do you have left is either you're in debt, or my handwriting's much better in different circumstances. Either you're in debt, or you've begun the borrowing of energy from your physical tissue, or you're left with somewhere between 20 to $2 to run your life today. And I want to point out what this means in actually practical terms. Just imagine that you have a marvelous thought, an inspiration. Like, here's your angel saying, listen to me. It's time for you to leave here and start a marvelous new creative job. Imagine that. And you hear the inspiration, because hearing does not require a lot of energy. What requires the energy is action. So you take this inspiration and you think, oh, this is good. And then your angel is sitting next to you and saying, look, Toots, if you really want this idea to become a powerful part of your life, then you better get some of the energy from your past, because this is going to cost energy. I need $80 worth of your energy per day to make this incarnate. And if you're running into high debt, the only thing you'll ever do with that energy, the only thing you'll ever do with that thought, is wish you could do something with it, and then regret that you never did. Oh, I'd like you to work, as I talk about your energy system today, I'd like you to have the same definition of healing in mind, and you could sort of fill in the blanks at your leisure. But healing is the process of returning these energy circuits into your body. You can call that recalling your spirit, put it in any language you want, but essentially what you're doing is you're unplugging your precious gift of energy, and you're returning it back into your body. Have you ever truly forgiven anybody? It's not a pleasant thing to do, but I mean, it is a necessity. Or have you ever finally let go of something? What happens is you actually feel unbelievably ecstatic. You feel like this, wow, I feel light. How many times have you said it or heard someone say, I just feel so light after that experience? You are actually not kidding yourself. You are lighter. This makes you lighter. It makes you more literally brings energy into your system. You are lighter. That's not just a sweet phrase we've created. This is the real thing. I had a real interesting history with the idea of healing. You know, I started getting involved with people and what made people ill around 1983, something like that. And during that time, because we were so influenced by the thought that we create our own reality, people would come to my workshops, and they would absolutely be filled almost with a pride that they had recognized that they created their own reality, and therefore they created this illness. And that somehow through the ritual of standing up and saying, I know I'm responsible for this, and I have, you know, cancer, or I have whatever illness, that by taking that responsibility meant sort of proclaiming the punitive end of it. And at the same time, the holistic end was giving us the information that if you had the right herbs and you ate tofu and you stood on your head and you did these things, that you were going to heal. It was inevitable. 1988 rolls around, and no matter what country I was in, it was phenomenal. The audience had shifted. It was more of this attitude. Okay, I've tried, look at this list, acupuncture, herbs, yoga, everything. By the way, I love all those things, but we have to talk about what it means to be in present time in order for these energetic tools to take flight, okay? You can't have your energy living in your life mausoleum and expect these energy tools to do their job. So what I realized is we should be healing a little bit more. And so now people were wondering, why am I not healing? So I started to look at that question. And I realized that we're scared, pun intended, to death of healing. It's as frightening to us. It's about as frightening as forgiveness, if not the same. And the reason is because healing, these are the reasons. Number one, we've learned to use healing in a real socially powerful way. We form wound mates with healing. We do this. You know, you meet somebody in here, you go through the basic questions. Where are you from? I'm from Chicago, I'm from Los Angeles. So what do? You follow the chakras. It'll go just in the order. Here, first chakra, you're where you're born. Then you go up to the second, which is, so what do you do for a living? Well, so you say, I paint houses and I paint pictures. Isn't that interesting? Got that in common. Then you go up to the third chakra, which is now a little more personal, but not real personal. Here's the question. Are you a vegetarian? Oh, no, I do this. Okay, so now you know all you need to know about someone here, but that's no longer bonding. It used to be the way we bonded, not anymore. Now, if you really want to bond with someone, you've got to share a wound. But now be careful about this, because you don't want to overwhelm them with all your wounds. You got to get a woundette, okay? So what you do is you pull out a small wound. You say something like, you know, when I was a child, I never got any donuts from my mother. Now, if you want to bond with that person, what you do is you look them straight in the eye, and you keep your thinking on donuts. I got to find a donut-sized wound, and you send your consciousness down to your first chakra file. Here, give me a donut, quick, quick, quick. And you come back up and you say, you never got donuts? I never got cupcakes. And right after that, the bond's established. And what's so fascinating is there's an archetypal union that takes place. Without you saying anything or the other person saying anything, you already understand that these are the rules. If I call you up and I say to you, I am having a donut flashback, you know automatically that you have to drop whatever you're doing and run and support me. Why, I ask you, would I want to give up that kind of security if that's what healing was all about? I mean, I took a real good look at this, and I want to share these perceptions with you and all the others that I've gained in this, in my years working as a medical intuitive and working in these groups. And I hope that this information will become a tool for you that you can take from here and from now on use for the rest of your life, so that you can become very conscious of when you're losing power, to whom you're losing power, or to what, how much power you're putting into an attitude. I mean, I had the experience the other day where someone came up to me and said that she had had a reading by someone, and this person told her that this woman is a detective, and that this person told her that this job was dangerous for her because she saw her getting shot. Now, and I talked to her and I said, are you going to finance that idea or not? Now, if we really knew what it was to develop high voltage willpower, we'd actually have the quality of will that says, as you feel your circuit leaving your body and breathing its prana into this thought, okay? And I want you to think of thoughts like a flat balloon that you literally blow up, that it attached to your energy. You could look at your circuit of energy and say, get back here and leave that alone. But now, our willpower is at the stage in our evolution, not for everybody, but for most of us, where we have become we're so unaccustomed to really developing will, that when your energy leaves your body and you say, you get back here, your energy circuits turn around and say, you talking to me? Because I'm on my own, you know? And so that's what makes healing so difficult. That's what makes the return of health so difficult, because we need a lot of focus. We need a lot of consciousness to begin to say to your energy circuits, I said, get back here. You've been out long enough. I want you home for dinner. Let me introduce the chakra system to you. The chakra system is the way that the Eastern traditions have expressed the energy or illustrated the energy through the human body. According to the Hindu tradition, we have 7, what they would describe as wheels in our energy field. I use the term data bank. I do this because the way I work with these centers is that for me, each one, and I'll explain this to you as I go further and further through this workshop, but each one contains a certain type of information, very specific to areas of our own spiritual maturation. We mature through, think of it as stages of power, and those stages of power are completely aligned to the 7 chakras. Furthermore, I think, when you think of physical anatomy, it's an incredibly well defined science. Every single cell has some kind of effect on the whole. Our energetic anatomy system is exactly as specific as is our physical anatomy. So much so that in a reading I've long ago discovered that there are very, very specific patterns to the illnesses that we develop. If we're losing power, if we, for example, develop an illness in our pancreas, a pancreatic disorder from diabetes to pancreatic cancer, this is tracked to issues of the 3rd chakra that deal with responsibility. When people, and now this is responsibility in the extreme, when someone is struggling with feeling that they're responsible for everybody, or the opposite, where they want no responsibility for their lives, the organ in your body that gets stressed the most is your pancreas. Now I can go through almost every organ and show you what chakra center they relate to, but there will be a direct relationship, okay? And the other thing I want to add at this point is your tendency, as I proceed with the rest of the information, is to think if you have a heart illness, that it's simply and always located in the 4th chakra. It must be something in the 4th chakra. That's not the way you read these centers. You read them as an entire group. And what I've realized is that most illness develops from an energy loss below your waist, even a heart disorder. And the reason why it locates in your heart has to be merged with whatever level of physical stress is working with your body at the lower level. For example, you may have a relationship that had just caused you a lot of stress in your life, indeed a heartache. So now you have the combination of your 2nd chakra working with your 4th. And depending upon how that stress works out, that will depend on what organ of the body it will locate itself in, but I can fairly well assure you that it will either choose the heart to influence, or the blood, which is of course through the heart, or some organ in the 2nd chakra, the colon, the sexual organs, the lower back. But this is how that works together. You have to read this as a whole system and not just lock into one chakra and make the assumption that if I have a chronic sore throat, it's only and solely a 5th chakra issue. That is not so. So as we go through the rest of the chakras in this workshop, I want you to think that you are learning a whole system that you have to read with fluency rather than one at a time. Okay? And then there is the point that I want to bring into the, illustrate to you, and that's that as energy comes in through the top of your head and you make these, shall we say, investments of energy from your chakras into various parts of your life, you make investments that then come back into your body in the form of what we could call returns on your investments. Every single investment carries a return. So that I want you to think, image your body as going out into areas of your life. What kind? You have relationships, you have your environment, you can make an investment of 90% of your energy in something you want, a piece of jewelry, a house. I mean, I've seen people lose their health because they want a certain house. Can you imagine that? I mean, maybe it's just me, but I can't imagine that. But anyway, and whatever you invest in has to return. Think of it this way. It simply has to return more than you invested. You've got to earn interest on your investments. That's the way you think from now on. You've got to earn interest on it. If it doesn't pay back to you a positive interest, why would you invest? From now on, just think of yourself as an energetic banker. Why would you invest? And the consequence is, if your investment gets you into debt, you've got to take out a loan. You can either borrow from another person's energy system, which I can promise you is going to blow that friendship right out of the water, or you're going to take a loan from your cell tissues. And you're going to borrow on energy that's been stored in your body in the cell tissue. You'll start pulling it out. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody who's had the experience of almost aging overnight. Have you ever seen that? Where someone has had such a stressful experience that within 3 or 4 months, they've aged 3 or 4 years. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They've had so many experiences that have cost them at the max, shall we say, of their energy system, that they're taking out fast loans from their body. And their body, consequently, and I want you to take this literally, ages faster. The more energy you keep in present time, the slower you age. The more energy you make in bad investments that return, that get you into, shall we say, energetic debt, the faster you age. And think of how logical that is. It drains. What if you start pulling the energy out of your cell tissue, your face? It's going to start sagging. Your body will start feeling fatigued. You don't have the same energy to keep the life force in you in the same way. Just use logic. Use the metaphor, the analogy, rather, that you are a banker, and that's all there's to it. And from now on, even if someone offers you a thought to invest in, here, just a thought to invest in. Here's a good thought. Here's a typical thought, like, don't you think the world is going to end as soon as we cross over the year 2000? Or some such popular thought in the marketplace these days. Now you have the option, am I going to finance that thought or am I not? You have choice. And you decide, I will not contribute 1 circuit of my energy into that thought. First of all, you've done the world a great service. But secondly, you've done yourself one as well, because you're not plugging your own energy system into a thought that can only bring back to you negativity and eventually cost you energy because it's not paying off the energy that you've loaned to that thought. Your first chakra is your tribal belief center. This is, remember that the image of when we are born, we have 100 circuits coming into our head. Now, we're not conscious enough to invest these circuits, so our tribe, our family, our biological family, does it for us. And the family invests your beliefs into what they believe as a group or as a tribe. So if your family is of a certain religion, they'll take a number of your circuits and invest that into their particular religious beliefs. Everybody's family does this. They'll invest a part of your circuits into your ethnic heritage and what you should feel about that. They'll invest, and even down to if the ethnic group that you're a part of has a sense of lower self-esteem or higher self-esteem. I mean, I remember someone saying to me in London one time, I tell you, people are a hoot. This woman said, you know, I suppose there might be other nationalities. One might want to be other than British, but you know, I can't think of what they might be. Now, I'm looking at her, and I said, I can think of one, but anyway. And we engaged in tribal warfare, okay? I mean, it was as simple as that, but mine, of course, was more enlightened. All right, now, and here, you also have, you know, as I said, ethnic, you have prejudice. You have attitudes that you absorb from society. For example, how many of you hold on to the notion that's very popular in this tribe that it's better to be thin than not thin? Everybody, hands up. Come on, all of you. How many of you, okay, here's the thin is in school of charm, okay? All right. Now, here's the young is better than old. Anybody? Okay. These are all tribal beliefs, and here's one of my favorites, is the tribal superstitions you inherit. All right, this is so much fun. So many people will say, I'll ask them, okay, what kind of tribal superstitions do you have? And they'll give me superstitions that they say they have nothing to do with. Like someone will say to me, you know, walking under a ladder. I said, are you connected to that? Absolutely not. And I want to say to them, walk under those ladders, all 17 of them, you know, and they won't do it, right? We're connected to unbelievable family. I'll tell you one story that comes to mind. With this wonderful psychologist I knew in Chicago. And she was Puerto Rican. And for her family, the fact that she'd made it all the way through to a PhD in psychology made this family so proud of her. And she was such a gracious person. But in her culture, they have a belief in like the evil eye or this kind of thing. And so there was a woman who apparently had this reputation of being that kind of what we would call perhaps a witch in a different culture. And she was walking home one day, this psychologist was walking home, and she spots this other woman looking at her through the curtain, like this kind of direction. And she came home convinced that the evil eye had been put on her, right? And it went right down into her first chakra. And your first chakra, by the way, if converted into illness, is the center of this runs your immune system. Okay, your immune system is your protective field. Okay, so this is your immune system. So what happened was she literally leaked her energy completely to this experience with this woman. From that moment on, every single one of her circuits came in and out in the blink of an eye. Instantly, her immune system took a nosedive. All right? And no matter, I'm going to show you how important this is, no matter how much you try to reason with a person, she was put under a spell. You want the medieval word for it? She was put under a spell. The area below your waist cannot be reasoned with. It's not possible. You can look down there as much as you want. And you are not speaking the same language. All right? So no matter how much you talked with her through the intellectual field and say, come on, that woman's just a crazy old crow sitting in a window. Her mind can say, crazy old crow. All she understands are the words. That's it. But nothing has more voltage than the fear. And one other thing you've got to keep in mind, when you're holding on to a tribal fear, you are not alone. Imagine if all of us in this room were in one tribe, okay? Was part of one tribe. Now, that means that for every tribal belief I had, all of your energy is running through me simultaneously. So if we all believed in our religion was better than anybody else's, we would be sharing that belief together. We would be evolving at the speed of that belief together. And first chakra is your slowest speed. And if someone started to talk to me about changing my religion or challenging it, instantly I would alert you on the energetic plane to come to my assistance. Instantly. And all of us, and you, I could be sitting there having an iced tea or whatever, gabi, doing something like that. Not even here, but a part of my first chakra would engage contact with yours, and off and running would be my energy to help you out. Now, let me make a suggestion just for the fun of it. As I go through all of these, and why don't you take notes if it would help you? Write down your associations. Write down areas where you think you might be losing power. So, let me move on here and show you the positive side of the first chakra, the tribal chakra, because you want to know that there is a positive and a negative, shall we say, a shadow side of every single chakra, and it's just as important to know one as it is the other. From the tribal energy, you also get a connection from nature. This is how you connect to groundedness. This is your rapport with nature, with the earth, with a center that with a sense that the earth is running through you and you through it. This is a very powerful part of the first chakra. Another aspect that's so incredibly gripping is that the first chakra is your center of community, how you need others, where you fit into a community. And so it teaches you loyalty, the meaning of loyalty, what it means to have a bond with people. Now, I want to tell you that this is, at this point, that you should not think of this just in terms of your biological family, not at all. These characteristics apply as much to a street gang as they do to the tribe that you work with. And just like a street gang or any tribe you work with, you have to go through an initiation to get in to see if you'll be loyal. And what is loyalty? Loyalty means they're finding out at an unconscious level how many of your circuits you're willing to commit to their cause. That's what initiation is all about, which is why there is such a difficult, sometimes challenge to initiation. I mean, I don't know if you saw that one news story, it was last year sometime, or maybe this year, it was this year, about the Marine initiation, where they take this hideous object and put it in the chests of these men and then punch on it for a half hour, and if they survive this, they're a Marine? Come on. Anyway, but it's a show of loyalty. It's a show of loyalty. Now, I want to point something else out about that, which is this. The tribe, the purpose of the tribe is survival, physical survival. The tribe is responsible for teaching you how to live with your feet and your legs straight on the earth so you can stand up for yourself. So it's meant to teach you social skills, so how you work well with people within your community, as well as teaching you a sense of what it means to act with honor among others. So often people comment to me that they had an unloving biological tribe. But what I've realized is the purpose of the tribe, in a very positive way, is almost to emphasize loyalty more than love. It's loyalty as love and loyalty as a form of love, which is why we speak about family being literally and more metaphorically in our blood. The vibration is literally in our blood. There's many, many, many positive aspects to this. You have a sense of pride in your history and in what your family traditions are, and a sense of respecting those traditions, sharing them with others. And it also is true that this first chakra is very much, totally thrives within a stable family. Because the fact is, we really are tribal creatures by design. While we might need our days or weeks or months alone, we also need to have some kind of contact with the community. If we're mystics, we need a mystic vacation with other mystics. You know, that's what's true. We have to be part of the community, no matter how we define that, because we thrive off of that, and because the nature of community energy is such that you really want to feel yourself plugged into others. You know, one of the reasons the Mormon faith thrives so much is not really so much based on the beliefs of the Mormon tradition, which of course they respect, and I do as well, but it's also the social structure that they provide for others. People within the Mormon faith know that if their lives fall apart, they have, boom, instant support in the blink of an eye. It's a phenomenal connection. So you ask yourself, how does this first chakra apply to me? What questions should I ask myself to find out if I'm leaking any energy? Ask yourself if you have any connection to your family, your biological family now, that is negative and that you fuel every day. Ask yourself. Nobody, huh? All right. And how much of your energy, How much of that memory do you finance every day? Ask yourself if there are belief patterns from your family that you really want to get rid of and you simply can't. I'll give you an example myself. I grew up in a very, very, very tight-knit family, and in the positive way. And my grandmother was a notorious cook. She never cooked small, she cooked big, and she cooked with not one, you know, she came from the school that if 2 is good, 13 is better, okay? So when she would make anything, she'd load it with butter after frying it with lard, and it was so good, all right? But when you went over there, her routine was to load up your plate. You couldn't do this by yourself. You have to load up your plate, and she'd give it to you, and you ate that, and while you're eating it, you could feel yourself expanding and expanding, and then you lean back, and you say, Busha, I'm done. Busha is Polish for grandma. And she'd say, what? After I cooked all day? After I did this? And she loads it up again. And you start again, right? And it's like you pray to God, let me find another stomach, ASAP. And when I said to my mother, I said, when I have my own place, I will never, ever do that to anybody. So I had a couple of friends over. And I'm having dinner with them, and after we finished dinner, and I said, is that all you're going to eat? After I cooked, and I got up, and I said, wait a minute, I'll be right back. And I ran to the phone, and I called my mother, and I said, I'm possessed. She's in me. And I told my mother what I did, and my mother said, all right, let me ask you something. Did you actually put the food on their plate? And I said, no, I didn't do that. She said, oh, no, you're not possessed. She's just in your kitchen. Okay. So when you ask yourself about these beliefs, you want to find out about beliefs. Think about connecting to negative beliefs you hold about others. Let me give, how many of you have ever said to yourself, or to others, well, you know, really, I don't really personally believe that, but I grew up that way. So what is so powerful about that is you recognize, look at the spiritual interference of that. What you're actually saying is, on my journey to consciousness, I'm not all that sure I'm interested in it, because what it means is I have to take responsibility for the negative beliefs I have about others, instead of going through my first chakra and out of my mouth comes, they did this to me, therefore I am not responsible. Instead of saying, you know what, I am responsible. There's something about that negativity that appeals to me. You know, you have to take, and you can't blame your family anymore. Got it? On to the second chakra. This center of your body is one that is the control and power center in the physical world. Control and power. Physical power. It deals with sex, power, and money. Do you have any interest in those subjects? All right. Now, this center of your body, this is also, I want you to know, the center that is your center of weaponry. Okay? So it's literally your center of survival. Okay? And I think it's so incredible that this is the part we've designed our weapons to go around. We just sort of instinctively knew that. This is the center, obviously, of one-to-one relationships. And what I mean by that is anything from personal, emotional, to the way you work with strangers, to the way you connect with people that you work with professionally. It doesn't matter. This is your one-to-one center. And it's so intriguing. Now, pay attention to the way people operate. When you meet somebody who you are nervous about in the power area, not in the self-esteem area, we'll get to that in a minute, but in the physical power area, somehow they either make you feel financially inadequate, or they make you feel like physically they can control the territory you're on, you're going to cover yourself like this. You will cover this. You'll stand there like this. You won't do this. You'll do this. It's absolutely intriguing. You will cover the part of your body almost totally unintentionally, that tells you where you are leaking power. So pay attention to that, because your body language is not an accident. It's designed as a signal system, very, very much so. So essentially, this is a very powerful power. All chakras are powerful, but this one has a particular kind of power that my sense after all of these years is, quite frankly, that all illness starts below the waist. If you hold the position, and I want to point out here that I do not hold the position that all illness comes from negativity. I don't believe that at all. And I think it's time that we seriously reevaluate that whole concept, because it's not true. Illness can be the consequence of a prayer, God give me guidance. And it opens up a whole new pathway in your life. It can, illness can represent other processes that are going on deep within you. It's not only because you may not have liked your childhood, or you were so traumatized by the end of a relationship. I mean, let's proportion appropriately how powerful negativity is. But the areas of our body that tend to hold the most negativity are the first, second, and third, because what happens is, let's say well, let's go on into how we negatively lose power in the second chakra. This may sound like I'm talking about an issue that none of you can relate to, so I'm going to talk about the need to be in control. Yes, I thought so. All right. When you need to control somebody, the technique, what automatically happens is you begin to discharge energy from your second chakra, and you literally begin to penetrate this system. Now, it's no accident that the nature of this penetration is exactly like sexual penetration. You are literally attempting to control another person's energy field, and usually the other person returns the compliment with either an equal battle in which you have an adversarial relationship with someone, or where you have the aggressor and the victim kind of dynamic going on. Either way, you're going to lose energy, and the need to be in control is very territorial. And you know, have you ever seen the way animals mark their territory? It's by using, shall we say, the energy from this part of their body. They literally mark their territory. We have that instinct in us. But we mark our territory by the way we speak, by our attitude. We're attitude markers, okay? And you know, you want to test how territorial you are? Watch how you feel if you walk into your workplace and somebody's messed up your desk, or somebody has moved your files. Now, I could tell you on a shall we say rational level, what's the matter with you? These papers weigh 2 ounces. This is just paper. It weighs 2 ounces. It's not paper to you. It's power, and it's power you've invested your circuits in, and that's all there's to it. And you lose a great deal of your sense of energy over that, because if you really thought about this, when you have controlling relationships, or the need to control people you fear losing, as in an emotional relationship, or where you are terrified that this person is going to change at a speed that doesn't include you, or just doesn't need you as much, that you are literally waging war 100% of the time of each day of your life. I just want you to hold that image in mind, that no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, you could be vacuuming, you could be whatever it is, but you are waging war, because this is the battle zone. And when you are thinking about another person with whom you have a negative relationship, and have any of you ever felt any jealousy? Yeah. All right. This is the energy. We have that kind of energy here. We have the energy of that you want to apply that kind of notion of jealousy, which is the hot, raging one, to what happens if your partner in relationship does this without your permission. Looks to the right, looks to the left. And that kind of controlling energy is so incredibly terrifying because you realize instantly you're losing power. But that's one of the hardest kinds of energy to literally call back to you because it shoots so fast and you don't want to call it back because you really want to hold on to the territory of that other person. Another part of our energy that we lose so quickly from the second chakra is to addictions. Now, addictions come in many forms. They're not just physical. We have emotional addictions. We have what we call supportive addictions to our personality, to our spiritual practice. But they're really addictions. They can be, in their shadow side, a way of controlling others. I've walked into many a household where people will say, take off your shoes, speak silently at this hour, I'm in meditation, da, 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 but you sense immediately. This really isn't in support of their spirituality. They're taking charge of the rules of the land. And you have to operate within those rules. I tend to say, excuse me, I'm out of here, because that kind of energy makes me very uncomfortable. You know, but that's exactly what's going on. On the other hand, let's talk about the positive side of this. The positive side of the second chakra is that you can empower people with it. You know, living in this planet, in a world where sexuality, money, relationships with other people mean a form of physical survival, it's very difficult to learn how to work with this energy on a generous basis. This is not the center of our body where we're accustomed to being generous. It is more often that we need to borrow from others a little bit of this energy because we're running out, because it's such an expensive chakra to maintain. This is not a cheap chakra center, okay? This is like your Neiman Marcus center, okay? Okay? And so when you are actually in a supportive relationship from the second chakra, you are capable of saying to another person, not pulling out money from your pocket and giving them $200 or something. It's more like holding the position of support that says, you know what, I believe you're going to make it. But you are actually kicking prana into that belief and transferring it to them. You're not just saying empty words. You're actually taking a part of your prana that engages contact with their energy system, so suddenly they feel an electric charge from the words you shared, whereas somebody else can say the same thing and it goes in one ear and out the other, as they say. Those people with whom you have that kind of relationship, either on the giving end or the supporting end, in terms of how they work with their physical power, how they feel about themselves physically, in terms of their sense of sexuality, in terms of learning to manage their control issues, and you're able to support them there, you engage a very beautiful capacity of the heart, which is the ability to merge that loving energy of the heart with that very primal energy, that primal survival energy of the second chakra. And you mix that two together and you have a very forceful electricity, because you give someone a true sense of, it's more than faith in the universe. It is simultaneously faith in God and in the universe that's in us as God, that you can handle what's happening to you, not in your emotional life, but in your physical life. It gives you physical strength. So when you're losing power from your second chakra, you want to ask yourself these questions. Do I need to control anybody? If so, how much? And identify who that person is. But the best way to identify it is not to say, and to say the person by name particularly, like I need to control Tom or Mary or Sue or Billy. You're leaning over your second chakra, by the way. We got your vulnerable point. But rather that don't look Don't evaluate whether you're controlling the messenger in your life. See it symbolically. Because you ask yourself, am I controlling in personal relationships? Because what you begin to understand is whether this person was sitting opposite you or that person, you would be just as controlling. So it's not that particular person. It's rather, am I controlling in relationships in general? Or do I allow others to control me? If so, why? Do I have any addictions? How much? And how much of my energy do I pour into addictions? How much do they have control over me? Right? Addictions are an incredibly expensive energetic habit, never mind what they do to you physically. Okay? What about your relationship to finances? Ask yourself, does money have power over me? Can I be controlled by money? Can I be bought? Okay? You've got to ask yourself these questions, because if you answer yes, and I'm sure nobody in this room will, but if you answer yes, what you have to realize is that in terms of healing, at an unconscious level, and maybe more unconscious than you'll ever realize, you'll associate healing with something you can buy versus something that you actually have to generate within yourself. Because you'll have a buy and sell mentality of power. So you really, and the other thing, I mean, you want to ask yourself, am I afraid to make money? Am I frightened of it? And here again, you're going to face a question of maturity, because you want to ask yourself, do I want to stay on an allowance on this planet? Or do I really want to manage myself at a more adult level and allow higher finances to come into my energy field? These are very powerful questions, and you have to dive deep sometimes, and sometimes you don't. I can't not tell you how many times in doing a reading with someone, I've picked up, as I go into this energy, I've picked up a belief that they've had connected to. If I just make an allowance, then I am permitted to be more irresponsible than other people. What do I mean by an allowance? And I don't mean literally 50 cents a week. I'm talking about, shall we say, a social income, a societal income that we could call an allowance, because it allows you a very survival atmosphere in which to spend that money. You can't exactly flit over to Paris every weekend. But if you have that kind of relationship with money, it also says, I don't really have to be that responsible as an adult, and I don't actually have to be that responsible for my social choices or in relationships. And it gives me permission to be more dependent. And I like that. It gives you permission to be more like a damsel in a castle. Okay, it's got that tone to it, all right, or for men, it comes across as what you might think of as the puer aeternus, the ability to remain the eternal boy. It's really dangerous when the eternal boy meets the damsel. That's a bad combination, okay? So you want to ask yourself, how much control does money, what role does money play with you, as well as sexuality? Are you comfortable with your sexuality? And nobody is, so don't be too quick to say yes, okay? But if you're not comfortable with it, what's the reason? Were you influenced by something that came from your childhood, from a relationship? Did someone once say something that made you feel very bad about your sexuality? If so, how much energy are you giving to this? And I'll tell you something. Negative or hurtful sexual memories are among the most difficult to detach from, because they really do damage. So to pull that energy back from where it happened, from what relationship, that's an effort. And I'm in a compassionate way, I'm going to say to you, you can't really do it instantly, but you can do it. You just have to be aware. It begins with figuring out how much of your energy is going in that direction to begin with. All right. Another energy you want to be conscious of in the second chakra is betrayal. You know, there is a reason why we develop the phrase, "I've been stabbed in the back." And when you use that phrase, be very conscious of it. You'll only use it when you're referring to something that has to do with the second chakra. For example, if I was a little late for our lunch date, you would never, ever, ever say, "Carolyn, you just stabbed me in the back." You know what I mean? It's too, you're smashing me with too much power in that phrase that the situation doesn't call. But let's imagine that you said to me, "Here, I'm going overseas. Will you manage my bank account?" I said, "Oh, yeah." And you come back, and I said, "You know, I can't help it. I invested all this in stock for you, and I played the horses, and I did that, and it's all gone." Now that qualifies for, "My God, did you stab me in the back?" Because your finances, incidentally, live in your lower back. Your money is not, repeat, not in the bank. All right? And so when we use feelings like "you've been stabbed in the back," or expressions like "you're stabbed in the back," you literally are referring to a survival power, i.e. sexuality, money, mostly money, that's been where the leak has been thrust into you by another. You've been lanced by a blade. And that your energy starts leaking out of there, and you feel like an act of betrayal. And that's another form of wound, shall we say, that is tremendously difficult to heal. Third chakra. Again, I'm going to start by drawing the line over this, and we're going to get into your third chakra. This is your center of personal power. Now, I want to point out here that all of these powers, all of these chakras, are vibrating power, a quality of power that makes you comfortable in your external world. These are all survival centers of power in your body. Right? Every one of them. How you survive within a group or community, how you survive one-to-one, and then this one is how you work with yourself in survival power. So the numbers go from great to one-on-one to the self. So in your third chakra, you have your center of self-esteem. You have your center, it's the chakra that carries not only your center, your feeling about yourself internally, but also how you feel about your physical body. This is your center of confidence. Okay? This is your center of honor. This is where your honor code is. Now, I'll tell you something about honor. It's one of those things that until I wrote Anatomy of the Spirit, I had absolutely no idea of the role that honor played in the maintenance of our health nor in the process of healing. None whatsoever. And then as I began to work from the position of honor, kind of becoming more and more aware of it in the people with whom I was working in either workshops or doing readings on, because every now and again I sneak readings into my workshops or whatever. I realized that people who truly had a sense of honor, which means they kept their word, they understood the significance of what it meant to hold on to a secret that another person has said, can I share a grief with you? Can I share a trauma with you? Will you honor my confidence? And they put it into their third chakra and said, it's safe with me. And what happens with that is you're literally taking some of your precious energy, your precious life force, and you're saying, here, give me that grief for a while. I'll put it in here because it doesn't cost me anything. I can hold it in my system. While your system, think of it as an energetic ulcer. While your system repairs itself, because this grief doesn't hold any power for me. I could hold it in my pocket forever, and it just doesn't have power. Right? But if you turn around, and you can't, I mean, that's a sense of honor. You've got to understand that's a part of your honor. It also means the manner in which you conduct yourself and how you see others. it's difficult for me to say this, but I really do believe it, and I mean today. And that's that we've become rather a dishonorable culture in which we've focused far more on the management of each other's dishonor than the expectation that we're dealing with an honorable person. We show up at every one of our meetings armed with 17 lawyers. No matter who says what to us, we figure every possible meaning of what these words could not mean, and we write our laws accordingly so that we capture someone within the parameters of vocabulary witnessed by a lawyer. I mean, we don't even trust that our leaders have any honor. We live in a very challenging time when it comes to this part of our lives, and honor and your personal honor code live here. And I want to point something else out. Energy not only comes in, it comes in and then it rotates right back up because you connect your energy to the ground, you make your contribution to the physical earth, and then you pull in the returns on your investments. Okay? Honor lies right in the third chakra, right before you enter into your energetic system of your heart, your will, and your mind. It's as if you need some sense of integrity, some sense of endurance, to be able, the capacity spiritually to say to the gods, to God, whatever you want to call the source, if you want me to do something for you, I have, and say to God, with your honor code, I have the strength, I can endure. What do you want me to carry? Because this is your center of endurance. Personal strength, personal respect of yourself. I mean, can you give your word to yourself and keep it? Never mind someone else. Can you say to yourself, that's it, I've had enough of you, you are exercising starting tomorrow, and then the next morning you get up like this, and you're lying down, and you say that you got the thought, exercise, it drops to your will, which means you got to choose it or not, and your will says, I'm sleeping. And it drops to your heart, and your heart says, well, maybe I'll put my energy in it or not. You can't control it, and it drops to your third chakra, and your third chakra says to you, excuse me, but you've just broken your word to me again. And I just want to point that out. And that when you do this, you don't understand. You really develop a very powerless relationship with yourself. And if you have that, how in the world can you have an empowered relationship with somebody else? Do you really think it's possible? I don't. Not at all. And you'll live in the assumption that every single person is going to be, has been, or is in the present moment dishonorable to you. You'll assume it. Okay? Now, part of the wonderful thing about this third chakra is that it makes you, either in this life or another life, because of how it can absolutely cause trouble in your internal zone. You have to grow to a point to settle your third chakra in, to make it, to go through the process of empowerment. You've got to learn what it means to maintain strong personal boundaries. Now that's a very difficult stage in personal development. Why? Because you start by learning tribal boundaries long before you get to the point of personal boundaries. You start to learn the boundaries of the house long before you learn what it means to have the boundaries of your room, right? And as you change those boundaries from physical space to personal space, you're going through a huge transition, especially if you come from a tribal situation where the tribe's notion of boundaries remains physical and you've evolved to emotional, psychological. You're speaking two different languages. But when you have poor personal boundaries, you're going to fall into this pattern. You'll start immediately giving your energy over to someone else because you need their approval. Okay? Because that's what matters to you, is their approval, not how much you approve of yourself, but whether they said something nice to you that day. Now, think about that. I just want to put this in proportion. I'm not telling you to change. I just want to give you a proportional attitude here, a proportional view of how preposterous this is. Now, imagine. You get up in the morning, you have your whole life in front of you that day. All of your creative energy, everybody you know, anything you want to do with yourself, and you dress for this one person whose approval you want. You form your language for this one person whose approval you want. You figure out your whole life's schedule for this one person. Now, do you really think it's worth it? I just want to ask you. Just good. But do you do it? Go like this now. Go like this. Okay. So, but this is your center for approval. This is also the center, of course, because it's personal boundaries. And if you don't have strong personal boundaries, just as a consequence of that, you are going to become manipulative. You have no other choice. If you can't go in through the front door, you're going to go in through the back door. Right? You'll develop private agendas with people, and this is how that's going to work. This is speaking private agenda fluently. You'll say to someone, can I do something for you? Or I've done this just for you. And that person will be grateful, but the way you are interpreting it is, okay, got a hook in their mouth. Okay, this is the first stage. They're going to need me. I'll do this for them more and more. It'll bring out the rescuer in you. It'll bring out that kind of manipulative attitude. One person did something for me one time. I was teaching a workshop somewhere, and she brought me my lunch the next day. I didn't ask her to do it, but it really, initially, I thought it was a very thoughtful gesture. And she must have spent hours decorating this bag it came in. You know, it had flowers on there, and like there was, what do you call those, sticker rubber butterflies, all kinds of things, had a bow. And she delivered this lunch, but her private agenda was that I would ask her to join me for lunch. Okay? And that during lunch, I suspected out would come the request, would you mind doing a reading on me? Okay? Now here's the truth about working with me. I am far more comfortable with giving me a direct hit. Carolyn, will you or won't you? But don't, you know, I'm very uncomfortable. But as it turned out, I already really did have plans for lunch. So I said, you know, I'd love to join you, but I can't. I've got a commitment here. And instantly, the way she felt about me went from high to crashing. I received a 6 or 7 page letter from this person telling me what a rude and arrogant person I was, what a disappointment I was to her, and how I'm not living up to anything all because I didn't have lunch with her. And had she simply said, Carolyn, I'd like a reading, drop the whole lunch thing, I would have said yes. And this would have never happened. But this is what, and you understand that when you operate from the realm of private agenda, you will absolutely believe that you are seeing reality as it is. That it's your reality and only you can see things as they really are. If I walked up to you and said, why are you interpreting that person's attitude today as though it were directed toward you? This person's anger has nothing to do with you today. You are simply seeing it that way. But if your third chakra is heading in this direction, you're leaking all of this energy into this perception and into that person's energy field. And you know what happens? When you are actually that connected to another person through the energy you pour out of your third chakra into them, into him or her, shall we say, what happens is that even if these people that you're leaking energy to are not in the same room as you, I mean, they could be on the other side of the planet. Distance matters not to leakage. Leakage does not speak time, space, or distance, okay? Get the rules straight. So here you are, writing something, doing anything you want with yourself, and all of a sudden, you feel this sort of jolt to your stomach. You feel a nervous stomach starting, right? And you'll automatically do this because it's a physical chakra. You'll look for a physical reason as to why that's happening. And someone might say to you, why are you so nervous today? Or why are you so uppity, jittery? And you think, I don't know, maybe I had too much caffeine, the standard excuse. But the fact is, you may be receiving energy from somebody who's trying to get their hooks into you. Or you may be leaking energy to that person or to a whole series of people and not even realize it. Because the dialogue that goes on from each of our chakras is a continual dialogue. 1 to 1, 2 to 2, it's just going on all the time. There's a lot to do with the maintenance, and we lose power here so rapidly. Spiritual development has so much to do with learning how to manage the self-esteem in this part of our body and our sense of self-respect and personal dignity. It is such a difficult challenge. All right. So let's go on to the positive side of this, our wonderful third chakra. I'm talking in the third chakra, the good point, the good power, the positive energy that generates from this part of our body, this area, is that we truly do have a sense of self-respect, not arrogance. Arrogance is not what I'm talking. I'm talking about self-respect, where we actually know what it is to feel good about the way we are, either publicly or privately. We take pride in our work. We know what it is. Not pride so other people applaud what we do, but because we recognize I'm breathing my energy into this act of creation. Whether you're baking something or creating, painting a ceiling in the Sistine Chapel, it doesn't matter. You are doing it from the recognition that I am absolutely conscious that my energy is flowing into this action and that it is crucial for me to respect the energy with which I do this. I have frequently looked at the beautiful art and architecture from Europe, as I'm sure many people have. You realize it has often taken people 20, 25 years to build one building, sometimes 30. And sure, of course, we can, credit the difference in technology. Of course, there's a lot to be said about that. But I also believe that the craftsmen who worked in these years of working with tools and the delicacy of working with their hands. And there are some certain professions, jewelry making, of course, that maintain that. But they had a very different sense of pride in how they did things. That level of personal pride and self-respect came from how well they created that which they gave to others. They're proud of their skills. This is also a level where it allows you to be able to deal with other people without fear that they're going to gut you in some way. And it gives you the ability to stand up to someone who might pass a negative remark in your direction. And you're able to detach from the power of that negativity and say, that's just that person's opinion. I am not going to allow that energy to enter into my energy system. You are strong enough to protect your own boundaries. Or if you said to another person, I've got this idea, what do you think? And the person is envious of your creativity and says, I'd never even considered doing that. You're strong enough to say, okay, that's your opinion, but I'll take someone else's, or I'll decide this on my own, where you're not seduced by the power of another person's consciousness. It is so difficult to live this way. And the other thing you want to remember is that your third chakra is your center of survival intuition. This is your center. Everybody's born with intuition. This nonsense that it's a gift, drop that. That's a bad rumor. Intuition is not a gift. It's what you're born with. You've got a survival skill. Every single person knows what it's like to get a hunch, to feel like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right to me. What do you think that is if not intuition? People think intuition is this, the capacity to see the future before you make a decision so you can know for a fact that you will not lose money and there'll be romance waiting for you on the other end. Excuse me, that's not intuition, that's fantasy. All right? Real intuition is this, God, something's wrong here. I feel like something's wrong here. I feel like every single time I walk into this job, I feel worse and worse and worse. Any of you ever had that feeling? What do you think that is? That's your intuition saying, get out of here. All right? You don't, intuition is not vision, it's this. Now, if you have low self-esteem, you'll never follow your intuition without or through a crisis. You will always require a crisis before you act on it, because you haven't got enough self-respect or self-esteem to actually listen to the energy as it's being presented to you in the energetic way, what I call the wisdom path. So you end up taking the woe path. Okay? You're always offered the next step in your life in the energetic way by feeling like this, I don't fit in this world anymore, I don't fit in this relationship anymore, I don't fit wherever, fill in the blank. But if you don't have enough self-esteem, you won't have the courage to say, I got to pack my bags and get out of here. You'll sit around oming and ahhing and hope, running to one psychic after another, anybody who'll tell you what to do next. So if it doesn't work, you'll blame them. Instead of saying, I'm reading this sequel, I've got the guts to do this. These are what these signals are telling me. And then you move on to your next level or the next place in your life. And you realize that's intuitive guidance. That's what it is. It's not about visions. It's about following the uncomfortable hits that you get in this part of your body. Now, these are the questions you want to ask yourself to figure out if you're losing any power from your third chakra. Let's begin with, if you tell yourself you're not losing power from here, you're lying. All right, now, ask yourself, do you feel good about your own sense of honor? Do you have an honor code? Do you keep your word? Do you respect yourself in this capacity? Do you need anybody else's approval? Or, here's the other way to present that question. Do you know anybody who needs your approval, who would be helped a great deal if you looked at them and said, if you looked at him or her and said, I really think you're a wonderful person, you can do this on your own? And do you consciously withhold that approval as a way of not strengthening somebody else? You want to ask yourself both questions. You simply do not want to ask self-evaluative questions from the victim's point of view of what have people done to me. You also want to take a look at what have you done to others, because you can lose an equal amount of energy by your negative actions to somebody else. If you just evaluate it from what have others done for me, you're just walking on one foot. All right, you've got to do it both ways. You've got to say, am I criticizing others? Am I a critical person? Do I operate from that point of view? Do I deliberately not respect another person's boundaries because I thrive on the power of that? Do I break my word or do I keep my word? You want to ask yourself these questions from both point of view. And then, when you ask these questions, don't just go down them like you read a menu. Go down it with a sense of, okay, pay attention. If a question makes you nervous, makes you uncomfortable, or if you respond too soon, that's not me. Remember Shakespeare, Sir, thou doth protest too much. You better go back in there again. You want to look at this. Your third chakra is your center, too, I want to add, of responsibility, of your capacity to take responsibility for yourself. And you want to notice that because it's in the physical third chakra, the ability to take responsibility, that's a lot of abilities, isn't it? The capacity to take responsibility for yourself physically, for your physical life, comes before the journey above your waist, which is to take responsibility of your energetic life. If you can't manage yourself in the physical, do you honestly think you're going to manage yourself well in the energetic world and the consciousness world? Would you give millions of dollars to someone who can't get over a drug addiction? Would you do that? Or would you be more inclined to wait until that person matured, kicked the drug habit, kicked the feeling of a low self-esteem, actually felt good, had a sense of personal dignity, knew what it was to live by an honor code. Now, you'd feel totally different, giving that person a lot of power. It's the same thing with us. Okay? So this is our area where you want to ask yourself about your sense of responsibility. These are the questions you want to work with.
What I tell people is, because it's so hard to kind of enter into the meditative state, start from your first chakra and work your way up. Follow the natural sequence of your energy instead of jumping here and deciding, I'm going to just pull it. It won't go that way. It'll never listen to you. Instead, you start with imaging what your first chakra would tell you, which is your tribe, your groundedness, about how pleasant your life would be if you weren't involved in the memory of that situation. And so you begin to visualize, not unplugging from it, but the kind of life you want right now. Just start then. It doesn't even have anything to do with that injury, wound, memory, relationship, just what you want today. And then work your way up to the second chakra, which is, what kind of relationships do I want today? How do I want to interact with people? How do I want to make my life different than the way it was? And don't go backwards. Don't even think about, don't do this within the context of that memory being in the center of it. All right? And then do it with your third chakra, which is, how would I feel? How do I really want to feel about myself? And start building up this stronger image of yourself. Now here again, that's not a small task, because the development of self-esteem or healthy relationships is very difficult. So you're only starting with creating a roadmap. In the meantime, what you do is you forbid yourself to discuss with anybody your past. You can't do it. I mean, this is what you can discuss, what you had for lunch. You can discuss safe past, but you cannot discuss wounded. You drop the wound language, all right? And that in itself is tremendously healing, because what you are actually doing more than anything else is you're breaking your word habit far more than withdrawing from the wound, believe it or not. You're breaking your word habit, because you get up and unconsciously plug in the same audio tape. I'll never forgive that person for what he did to me, or she did, it goes on and on. So if you consciously change your vocabulary and you meet somebody and they say, how are you? And you don't say, well, it's my childhood again, it's just been having dinner with me. And instead say, I'm really fine, it's okay today. I put my shoes on the right feet. You'd be surprised the healing power these simple things are, because again, in terms of the divine paradox, it's the simple things that have the power. It's the mustard seed that moves your mountain. Nobody will make any effort by moving the mountain. That's how you unplug. You start doing things like this that look like you're not unplugging, but they really are. And then by the time you get to your mind, if you will, and you look backwards, you can't even see the person. One of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me was when I was 20 years old, and I was in a big trauma. I think it was because I broke a pencil. You know how big traumas are when you're 20. But I really was traumatized about something in college. And I had a dream, and it was probably more than a dream. But all of a sudden I found myself 20 years in the future, and I was 40 years old. I'd give my right arm to be 40 now. But anyways, I was 40 years old. And there was a teacher, a guide with me, who said, all right, now look back at what's upsetting you. And I couldn't even see it. I said, well, I don't remember what it was. He said, all right, now, with that attitude, go back there and deal with it. And I cannot tell you how liberating that experience was. I've used it ever since. Whenever I am that upset about something, I literally will leave the time zone. So instead of going backwards, I go this way. And I oftentimes tell people that another wonderful way of unplugging is to go visualize tomorrow and see if they really want to see that person again next week. A healthier person, someone who's much closer to a balanced state of health, is someone you could go visit your past as much as you want. Just don't live there. You know, and in looking at how we talk about healing and the release of our past, I think that we so often confuse that with not remembering our past. Of course you can. But you don't want to remember it in such a way that every time you go back there, it's like swallowing crushed glass. You want to be able to go back there and say, okay, I learned this, I learned this. You go back with gratitude, or you go back with a sense of comfort. And the other thing is, a healthy person, I think, is someone who has the capacity to see the symbolic reasons why things have occurred in their life the way they did and the way they are. And there's a lot I can say about that, but in a nutshell, I'd like to give an example, and that's that imagine that you are the sort of person who has relationships, personal, let's talk about a romantic relationship, that always ends in the same way. You're the sort of person who enters into relationships in which you are always there to help the other person. And you're always there to do anything this other person wants out to. And this is how your dialogue goes. The other person comes home and says, oh, I've had such a horrible day, and you say, oh, let me help you. What can I do for you? You want to talk about it? Right? And let's say this person does this 6 out of 7 days a week, and you still don't change your way. And yet through the process, this person, I don't know, gets a little stronger, maybe not, but let's say he doesn't. If you notice how I assume it's a man, I make note of that, by the way. So anyway, the man gets a signal in his head or in his gut that it's time for him to get on with this pattern. And if this woman is not strong enough to say, God, you are boring me. Do you know what a bore you've become? Learn a different vocabulary. Shape up, but shape up or shut up. Right? His own life force is going to guide him out of that relationship and into another relationship where his partner would be strong enough to do that for him. In the meantime, you are going to feel abandoned and abandoned and abandoned again. Now, if you decide to be angry at that man, you're going to miss the point. Instead, you need to take a symbolic look. You need to stand back and say, why does this happen to me every 3 months with everyone I date? What's going on here? It's got to have something to do with me. And at that point, you're finally realizing that if you remained angry at this person, you would be shooting the messenger and not getting the message.
We are now into the territory above your waist, and we're into your internal reality. Down here, of course, is your external. I want you to keep that in mind because there's such an intriguing difference between these two worlds. Your fourth chakra, of course, is your emotional zone. This area of your body regulates your sense of harmony, your sense of love. It is always associated with that sweet, sweet energy that we know as love. And I'll tell you, I love the heart energy because the truth is, for as arrogant as the mind can be, and the mind is an arrogant instrument, it is this part of your body that calls the shots. If your heart's not in the ring, as they say, you're going nowhere. I don't care how much the mind wants to push a project. It just will not work unless your heart's in it. This is mission control. Which is why, to learn the energy of the heart, you want to learn it in the most sophisticated way that you can. And I mean spiritually sophisticated. I don't mean I don't mean romantic sophistication. I mean spiritual sophistication. This is also your center where you cope with forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is another. I personally think that the majority of people would rather sleep on a bed of hot coals and then get up and be impaled before they would forgive somebody. It's that unattractive an idea. But we have to talk about it because the reality is healing is the journey of forgiveness. And that's just the way it is. What do you think pulling unplugging your circuits is all about, if not forgiving? I mean, forgiveness, quite frankly, is simply giving up the illusion that things could have been or should have been otherwise. It's no more than that. The fourth chakra sits right between your bottom three and your top three, as if to say, you cannot make safe passage into the upper decks of your consciousness unless you manage and go through the initiation of the heart, which is to learn the true meaning of what it means to understand love, not just loving another, but what love is all about, that love is our way to tangibly touch the life force, right? That one of the greatest acts of self-love is in fact forgiveness. It is not a favor we do to somebody else. It's the greatest thing we could, forgiveness is the most selfish thing you'll ever do. Because what you're actually doing is you're unplugging from a part of your past or from another person that says, I'm so tired of financing you with my energy. I'm taking it back because what happened between us happened. I simply am not interested in financing that memory anymore. I'm going to let you go. Okay? So this is how we want to understand the fourth chakra as its central power place. Now we're going to jump in, as we always do, through the back door of a chakra so you can understand how we lose power from that, right? All right, here go our energy circuits. And we're going to make a line like this through our history because the inability to forgive, for example, tends to run like a line. And we just load it up. We'll start with our parents or our siblings. And then when we go up to the people we used to play with or high school friends, then we mature there to people in our 20s, then people, you keep a log like this, don't you? In your 30s, and then people in your 40s, and et cetera, et cetera. And every single time, every day when you get up in the morning, you start sending your energy through your past. And what you've got to remember is that at some point, your past is going to be more real to you energetically than your present. You won't even be able to see your present life because all you're really looking at is one historic situation after another. And you speak this way. You speak in terms of your history. You do this. You say things like, well, I'd like to do this, but last time I did it. And you instantly run back 10 or 20 years instead of your angel sitting there kicking you in the astral saying, but this is a new decade. You've got completely different maturity and you move on. But you don't hear this. Instead of moving on, you move backwards. Okay? It could be that your angel says to you, look, I've arranged a date for you. And you're going to meet this person at, we thought maybe a coffee shop. I'm working on his angel, I'm working on you, and we've arranged the time we're going to meet, so make sure you get there, because this would be a nice relationship for the two of you. So all of a sudden, you suddenly think, I have this craving for coffee. And you think it's just you, right? And here your angel's pulling strings. So you start rolling down the street to this coffee shop, and you walk in, and you see this wonderful person sitting there, and she sees you, and all of a sudden, you go like this, and you go like this energetically. Wait right there. And you start pulling. The past come. I'll be right there. And then you put on those glasses, and you think, oh, God, she looks exactly like he looks. And you end it right there. Or what's worse is once you meet, you pull out your wound file. So that you set the boundaries. I don't date anybody who does this to me. You do this kind of thing. And it's all because... Anyone has ever done that? Put your hands up, all of you. All right. So that has a lot to do with this chakra center, as does the inability to love yourself. To love yourself. I mean, this is a real tight zone, because I'm going to show you something. The language below the waist is very different than the language above the waist. Below the waist, because it has to do essentially with the 3 stages of tribal life. In below the waist language, the word self only is connected to ish. Okay, selfish. But when you get above the waist, you put the ish on the other side, and you have self-development, self-fulfillment, self-care, self-love. Your tribe says selfish, selfish. But you're into a whole new concept of what the self means, of what it means to develop self. It's not this. It's not that kind of thing. It's the journey of self-exploration. You know, willing to look into your shadow side as well as celebrate the light that's in you. This is that part. This is also your center of what it means to love others. And of course, you're going to start, we all do. Don't I talk like I'm not subject to this, but I am. We all start with loving each other, learning what the meaning of love is in this sort of tribal way, that we can only love people that look like us, walk like us, talk like us. Then we get to the second chakra, we can only really love people that we can sort of control or who have some influence, some connection to our physical security. Okay? We will tell ourselves we're in love with someone, even though we don't love them, because of their finances. Okay? We'll live that kind of illusion. And we work love up to the fact where we try to mature love into what it means to love a person. And we'll go through conditional love, and then we start the journey of unconditional love, of what that means. And that is also a part of the lessons that we learn through the 4th chakra. This is, of course, one of the most, like all of them, each chakra has its own way of draining your energy. But you can lose a lot of money on a business deal, or you can have your 17 cars stolen from you. None of that will drain you of the same energy so much as a broken heart, or a heart that's been violated in some way. Because this is the energy that talks to you about whether or not you like being alive. I don't care how much you own, and neither does your spirit, by the way. And that's what you've got to remember. Your spirit is not actually interested in counting the gold that lies in the bank. Your spirit prefers the gold that comes from the hearts of other people. And when all is said and done, unless that part of you feels fulfilled by how well you love another, and how, if you can allow others to love you, then you're going to live this life as though you are empty. Totally, totally empty. Okay? Now, let's move on to the positive side. Of course, the 4th chakra deals so much with the power of love in what it can do for others as well as yourself. You thrive with love. I mean, let's face it, love is a ball when it's done right, right? I mean, is there anything that's more fun? Right? We want to add to this the healing power of love. I'm not sure, quite frankly, that people who lack self-love are very successful at healing. I suspect they're not. And the reason is because the lack of self-love contributes so much to the depletion of the body. The fact is, you have to have some degree of self-love to heal your body, all right? Of self-appreciation, and that's part of the power of this. The energy of compassion plays an enormous role in the mature heart. Shall we say, let's call it the mature heart. And that the energy of compassion is so powerful because at this level, as you mature, you get past the difference between self-pity or pity toward others and what it means to truly have a compassionate energy. And to love someone enough, and this is very much the power, the positive side of love, where you can love someone enough to let them suffer if that's what they need to do. To recognize that if I bandaged this wound too quickly, you'd simply produce another one because you would never have learned why you got this wound in the first place. I've got to love you enough to let you hurt. It's a strong kind of love, and it takes a very mature type of heart to recognize when you need strong love and when it's okay to say to someone, oh, come on, it's all right, I'll buy you a chocolate soda or something like that. This is that kind of love. The other positive side of one of the many positive sides of love, it's certainly endless, is that it gives you a language to God. And it's an irrational language. The heart doesn't necessarily need words to speak. You literally can say, I'm just going to focus on what I think ecstasy might feel like, and pull your attention out of your head, because it's the rational center of your body. You just pull it down, and you just focus on ecstasy, and perhaps at first you won't feel anything, and maybe at second too. But as you continue a discipline that says, this is the irrational language of God, there is no reason in my heart, and focus on becoming totally unreasonable, you'll get there real fast. All right. Now, when you want to check on the flow of where this energy is and what you're connected to, you want to, as I said earlier, you want to ask yourself, is there anybody I need to forgive? Is there anybody you need to forgive? Let me do this again. Is there anybody you need to forgive? All right. Okay, now, I want you to think about this, and for yourself, list the people. And don't be too hasty in doing this, because you'd be surprised how many people you have to forgive lie in wait. You know, or in the back of your closet, or where did you find this, right? So you list those, but start with the ones that really draw the most attention from you, and actually ask yourself, how much of my energy goes into that? How much of my energy am I financing? Or what about memories that have a hold on me that I simply can't let go of? It's interesting. Many people that I've met who have what I'd call negative memories, and they're not necessarily associated with people, but perhaps some kind of traumatic experience. As the years go by, I suspect that they exaggerate 10 more points per year on that experience. You know, that by the time, 10 or 20 years has gone by, now let's look at it from this point of view, they have to make the experience 20 years larger, otherwise they can't see it. All right, so I think there's a really, really powerful exaggeration process that takes place. Right? The other thing you want to recognize as you look toward the nature of love is to ask yourself, do you have any knowledge with yourself of what self-love is? Now, I'll tell you, you're going to start doing self-love from below the waist, because that's just the way it is. So you'll start self-love this way. When it's time to go on the journey of self-love, this is what happens. You pop into your individual heart for the first time. Prior to that, you've been living in a tribal heart, so that your tribe invests your heart for you. If you said, I've got to follow my own heart, I think I like this. No, you don't. You follow this. This is what the tribe believes in. This is the tribe manages your heart. Then one day, you pop out, and you suddenly realize, I have a heart of my own. Look at that. And you start looking at your life for the first time through your own sense of, I want to discover who I am. I mean, this feels good. And you scream I for the first time in a way you never had before. So now the trick is that you have to go back to your tribe and tell them in the nicest way possible, I'm nothing like you, and I'm out of this nightclub, okay? So you begin this journey into a very, very different quality of love. And you're going to start that journey, and the journey of self-love, you're going to go right back here, so that self-love means that you move out of the physical place where you are. The first thing you're going to do in the discovery of your own way of loving yourself is you'll change physical locations. You absolutely will. The next thing you'll do is you'll change jobs. Or you'll change your relationship. Or you'll change both. Because they know anything that you built before this time is not going to make the transition over the river. Okay? It's just not going to do it. And then you will change the way you look physically. You will. It is inevitable. You're going to look at yourself through tribal eyes and think, And then you'll do something to change yourself physically. And then you'll go through the passage into the heart. And of course, then you'll discover the nature of your wounds and why you've been hurt. You'll look at your whole life very differently. And that's why, and that's where and why you encounter the power of forgiveness so strongly. Because the essential key of recognizing you've passed some level of initiation into a much higher voltage of your spirit is when you are actually practicing forgiveness from this level instead of second chakra forgiveness, which means you simply put your weapons down but not the desire to shoot. Now I want to take you into the fifth chakra. This is your center of will. This is willpower. And there's a lot to learn in this one. And again, this line is so essential because obviously the center of will. Another way I want you to think of this as your center of choice. You know, the power of choice, what it means to make a wise choice, what it means to take responsibility for the choices you make. You think of it as this way, that what directs your energy circuits to the targets that they go to are the choices you make. This is what sends your energy back. Just like it's the power of choice, the power of will, that causes you, that allows you to have the, shall we say, vibrational stamina to get your energy out from something. Now, just as an example, I want you to focus on something that has your energy captured, that you simply can't unplug from. Anything you want, a relationship, I don't care what it is, it's irrelevant, because once you're plugged in, you're plugged in. But think of something that's really big, okay? Now, we're going to talk about your willpower. And we're going to talk about your power of choice. And when I say 3, unplug and make it forever. 1, 2, 3. Are you unplugged? No. Now that gives you, all right, that gives you a notion of how incredibly difficult it is to train this part. And here's the other reason. It's because our first encounter with will is below the waist. It's totally below the waist. That's why when it's so easy for our understanding of will and our understanding of the fifth chakra is tied to our ability to speak up. Okay? It's very hard to learn to speak up for yourself. It's very hard to learn how to represent who you are and establish your boundaries. It's just very difficult to do that. And our willpower has an incredibly intimate relationship with our second chakra. And the reason is we first encounter, you see, when you're in your first chakra, more or less, your tribe controls your will. You know, so you don't have a whole lot of conflict at that area. The conflict doesn't develop until we get to the second chakra, and the second chakra meets the fifth, and therein lies the conflict. Now, your first definition of willpower will be your ability to control others. That's willpower 101. All right, and you'll measure and your success by tribal standards. The tribe will measure your success. And we'll say that you have a strong will by the amount of territory you've amassed in your first chakra. In terms of how many people you've put in here and how much money you amassed, this is your will zone. Okay? And that's why this controlling center has so much impact. Your center of control and the use of your will to control others is also tangible below the waist. And so you can feel and sense it. Now, this kind of willpower cannot help you heal. It is not possible. It's totally not possible. It also is reflected in the quality of choices that you make in, say, the negative side when we reverse it. When will is defined as your ability to control others, the other side of this level of perception is that you have no will. It's given over to somebody else in order that you be controlled as one of the members living in this group. See what I mean? You give over your control to this person so that person manages you. Okay? Now, if you are in that situation, and let's face it, most people are, there are many more followers than there are leaders, then you end up in this state where you have no ability to speak up and to speak up for yourself. You can't state your own boundaries. Have you ever seen a relationship and where somebody asks a question of a person, either the male or the female, and one of them looks up, the one who was not asked the question answers it? Have you ever seen that? Can you imagine a more obvious manifestation of a relationship in which one or the other says, here, take this, and you take charge? That is such a striking example of what I'm talking about. Or that you can't respond to your own creativity. Look, you've got it. The will is equal to the choices that you make. Now let's imagine you get, watch this, you get an idea that comes in through the top of your head. And it floats to your mind. And the mind is such a seductive, negotiable instrument. You can do anything to control your mind. And the mind, so this idea pops into your mind, and it says, you want to start an ice cream parlor, and your mind says, well, I know what ice cream is, I know what parlor means, I like ice cream, this could be fun. Your mind, like this. Then, the idea goes into the fifth chakra, in which you have to make choices that redistribute the energetic investments you are now living under. You have to, in order to build your ice cream parlor, you may need 50 extra circuits in present time than you already have, which means you have to make choices to unplug from the past, from anywhere, in order to get your energy into present time. And this is where, excuse me, that's a fifth chakra. Let's do it again. That's a fifth chakra faux pas. All right. You'll start making choices, or you have to make choices, in order to get your energy in present time so that you can continue moving this idea down the cycle into the first chakra, which is physical form. This is your fifth chakra. Have you ever felt all choked up? You ever felt, and incidentally, when, excuse me, when you get that feeling that you're choked up, it's so incredible because it's exactly what happens. What you're trying to do is prevent the perception your heart has just had from getting to your mind. That's exactly what you're trying to do. And the reason is because once the heart gets into the mind, it's all over but the crying for the mind. Okay, because the heart takes charge. But it has to get through here, the will zone. Because once the heart gets up here, the choices the will makes are now determined by the heart, not the mind. We've just made an incredible shift in power. And so, in order to prevent that type of contact, we'll get choked up. Or we'll create a choked up situation. Now, this can cause a severe injury to your spine. Any of you ever get tight here? All right? Any of you ever get tight in that part of your body? I want you from now on, when you feel tight here, tight in the upper body, aside from going to your local chiropractor, and I believe in them so strongly, but you also have to begin to say to yourself, what am I holding on to? What am I getting choked up about? Because choked up doesn't mean just weeping. It means you're trying to not allow your mind to speak to your heart or your heart to speak to your mind. The other thing I want to point out here is this chakra, when you have a weak will, you can't describe your needs. Someone will say, what kind of emotional needs do you have? This combined with the low sense of self-esteem, and you're going to have someone who says things like this, I don't think I have any personal needs. I'm not sure. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Then you'll go over to someone with a stronger will and you'll say, do I have any personal needs? And they'll say, no, see, I don't. I knew I didn't, I couldn't figure out. You'll do this. Or you'll have the kind of will that someone can eclipse very easily. Let's say you do have personal needs and you say, I don't think I really want to do this. Of course you do. Okay, here. And then what happens is you leave that situation absolutely hating yourself. And you don't watch it. Here, your will that you just gave to this other person, then your energy, your consciousness goes down to your heart and you realize your heart says, what have you done? You've just agreed to do something that I will not do. I am not in this. So then what you've just agreed to do goes down to your third chakra and then it really starts hurting. Because at this point, your third chakra says, if you had any self-esteem, you wouldn't get yourself into these crises. When are you going to learn to manage your own boundaries? And then it drops to the second chakra, where you take out your weapons and you want to hate the other person. But the truth is, you can't stand yourself. And then it drops to the first chakra, which is how it physically manifests in the world, this circumstance you never wanted to get yourself into in the first place. And you feel like a rape victim, but you've raped yourself, okay? The positive side of the fifth chakra is that you get it. You get it. What do you get? You get the truth that the real meaning of will is not your capacity to control anybody else, but to control yourself. You know how hard that is? I mean, we know how hard that is. You know, several years ago now, I did in my early years of doing workshops, I did a workshop in Denmark. And this left such an impression on me. There was a lovely little girl in this. She wasn't a little girl. She was a petite woman, but she was so tiny. She was like a little girl to me. And she had AIDS. And she came up to me and she said, I'm trying to heal AIDS. Do you think I can do it? She also was limping. She was a prostitute and she had been badly beaten up. And I looked at her and I was talking about her capacity to develop a strong will. She smoked like crazy. So did I at the time. I thought to myself, we could be great friends. But anyway, but then I looked at her and I thought to myself, if I had the cure for AIDS in this hand and a cigarette in this hand, and I said to her, okay, pick one, her mind would go here, but all of her circuits would go here. And that no matter how much she tried to pull her will out of her nicotine habit, she could imagine that she was doing that. She could choose every day and scream, I pull my will, but the fact is her willpower would do this. Are you talking to me? Have we met? Because through her life, she's always given her will to everybody else to manage. Therefore, when she needed her will, finally, to act as her ally in the management of her own life, it wasn't there. And I cannot emphasize enough what it means to develop your will. You know how you want to do it? Like I said earlier, go to the busiest place in your life that drives you crazy. Instead of running away and seeking out quiet, which is just fine. But in the development of your will, you don't want to set up the perfect session for yourself or circumstance. You want the thing that draws your will out as easily as possible. So put yourself in that setting and then call your spirit back and say, get in here. I'm going to know that I'm in charge of you when I can walk near that type, listen to that type of music 24 hours a day and command my will not to hear it or command myself not to be attached to it. Then I'm going to know I've got some clout here. I'm learning. I'm getting some power. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. The fifth chakra in its power state gives you the courage for honesty and for speaking honestly in your life, for representing yourself in an honor-filled way with others, in having communication with others. Do you realize how difficult it is to speak honestly to somebody? Everybody, that's the loudest you've made all day. Right. That is the hardest act, I think, or one of the hardest by far that we've ever, and we have so many ways of disguising our feelings or maneuvering them so that we look like we're honest, we feel like we're honest, but we're not. The courage to be honest is phenomenal. And it doesn't just mean to tell people in an angry way what you will and will not do. It means the capacity to speak openly, and maybe not even openly, but honestly about your life in such a way that you aren't threatened by the responses of others, that you know no matter what someone else says to you or tries to talk you into, you're not going to be seduced. There is a real sense of strength in you when you know your will is not an instrument that's for sale. Okay? And then you have it's easy for you to state your boundaries and without having to fight a war for them. You know, people who I've met, and there's not a lot, but the people I've met who've had the strongest willpower have not had to speak about it. Pun intended. It simply vibrates from them. You know, this is not a person who's going to negotiate or betray his or her will. This one's not for sale. I think I'll find somebody else. Okay? You know it. I remember, I have a very close friend, a gentleman I teach with quite often, and he's not someone whose will can be negotiated. So the way I've learned to deal with him is I will simply say to him, I'm going to try and manipulate you this afternoon, okay? I just put it out on the table. I mean, because we've known each other too long and can see too well, all right? And then you have the power to use your will in ways where you can help other people become empowered, where you're not afraid of their growth. You know, that's a very, very challenging part for human beings because we are by nature competitive. And that's another reason why I always tie the fifth to the second, because your second is that sense of competition. And it's so easy for us to withhold our will in such a way that we don't want to give a circuit of our energy over to another lest they start running faster than we do. Right? But if you have that sense of inner will, that sense of inner guidance that tells you, my life is not in that person's hands, but in my own. And not only that, there comes the spiritual moment when you say, not my will, but thine. Where you finally take this instrument out, this just given you lifetimes of headaches, and instead of giving it to everybody else, you say, oh, I've had enough of this. You take it. And you begin to live from a very different level of power. That's the irony of consciousness. First, you have to go through this journey of becoming aware of how to use your will in the world and then how it doesn't work in the world. Isn't that interesting? Then you have to start using it to clean out your inside, and when you're done with all that work, you get rid of it. But this is the journey of the empowered will, where you finally become so empowered you don't need a will. Isn't that divine irony at its best? Now, you want to evaluate whether or not where your energy is invested, how the strength of your own willpower. You got to ask yourself these questions. Am I keeping my word? Do I keep my word? If not, how often have I broken my word, and to whom? And to whom? Have I lied today? How often do I tell lies? Get a sense. Ask yourself these absolutely raw, bone-raw questions. And as you do, feel whether energy is leaving your body. And you know that because you'll either, if you're answering yes to the following questions, do I lie? Do I use my words to hurt others? Do I speak dishonestly, or am I able to express myself honestly? Whichever, you ask yourself either way you want to speak to yourself. But if when you ask yourself the questions about the negative side of will, like, have I told a rumor about someone today that's simply not true? And you feel that energy of shame rush through you, or that energy of heat. Shame is a very hot energy. All right? It doesn't feel cool. It feels, you actually flush with heat, and it goes through you. It's fire. Then you know you're not kidding yourself. You are losing energy fast. And then you sit with it, and you wait till whose images come into your mind. Okay? If it's, anybody's image, you check off in your mind, okay, that one, that one, that one, that one. And then when you come out of that exercise, ask yourself to think about it. What did I do? What did I say? Become conscious of it. And then literally assess, boy, have I got a lot of energy invested in that. How do I pull it back? Because you want to retrieve your energy. I really always recommend to others, and I actually finally have developed this as a daily practice. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I can teach about it. I've taught about it all over the world, and I didn't even do it myself. How do you think I felt when I got to this chakra? But anyway, but I finally have it down as my own discipline. And actually, I do it partly for the amusement of it, like, where am I? It makes me feel like a loose cannon on deck. But I like to check in the evening and in the morning what I'm plugged into. I like to become aware of how fast I'll plug myself in to somebody's something, and I can't get myself unplugged from it. I mean, I like to become aware of these things. I mean, how many of you, for God's sake, can even unplug from a homemade cookie? I mean, we're talking about major league unplugging here, but let's put it in proportion. Do any of you eat cookie pieces? Because that myth, cookie pieces have no calories. So you piece your way all through a whole roll. Oh yeah, I've been there, done that. Going there, we'll do it. Okay. We're going to move up now to the 6th chakra. This is your reality headquarters. Reality headquarters. This is your center of, this of course is your mind, your intellect. This is an area that gets you into a lot of trouble. This is your center of human reasoning. Now, human reasoning, by its very nature, is unreasonable. Because it operates on this principle, this, dare I call it principle, this illusion. I like to think of this as Buddha's center. Because this has so much to do with the management of your illusions, okay? And the mind says nothing's an illusion, because if I step on your foot, don't tell me that doesn't hurt. So to get to the point where you can take this instrument that manages your 5 senses and convince it that there are more senses in the world is an incredible journey of re-education. And that's what you go through as you work your way into the as you work your way through the maturation of the 6th chakra. You lose energy in this place because the mind likes rational and reasonable answers. And so you get stuck on things like this. How many of you have said to yourself, I'll move on with my life if I only could figure out why that happened? Any of you ever do that? All right. If you could only have a reason that makes sense to your mind, then you will take up your bed and walk. But until the mind has a logical, mind you, logical reason that includes the following: none of it was your fault. It won't go any further. You know what I finally realized about the mind? It's a clever little bugger, is that the mind tends to encourage the rest of the human energy system, and particularly the heart, to hold on to grief. For this reason, it's a superstitious reason, quite frankly. The reason is very primal, which is this: if I hold on to all my grief from yesterday, I won't get any new grief coming tomorrow. Okay? So I stay locked in, and the mind keeps supporting this by giving me self-righteous reasons why I shouldn't forgive. And the self-righteousness just works its way all the way down. And then I am absolutely certain, because of my primal tribal belief in God, that our notion of human reason is the same as God's. This is the only difference, is the mathematics. If we are just people according to the law of an eye for an eye, then God is 100 times as just, but he still works along the logical lines. If we are supposed to be loving, then God is all loving. It's just logical. So, God operates according to our legal system. And that's how the mind likes it. Because then we can figure out how much does it cost to strike a deal with God so that we don't have to go to court. You know, it's this kind of thing. That's how the mind likes it. So that when you go on the spiritual journey, so much of the journey is the dismantling of your rational mind in order to allow the irrational, miracles, angel conversations, time travel, bilocation, the manifestation of the divine instantly into your hand to happen. Those are irrational acts. Now, this is an illustration of the closed mind. It almost speaks for itself, doesn't it? Now, and this, you know, mind you, is so significant to issues not just of healing, not just of healing your body, but healing patterns that you've gotten yourself into in your life. Like, how come I can't make any money? How come every single time I've started on a creative project, I've fallen flat on my face? I want to know, is there a logical reason? No, there's no logical reason. There'll be a different kind of reason. There's this kind of reason. And you've got to have an open mind to get to the irrational. If you look for the rational reasons, you'll go this way. You'll take your sight and you'll go down here below the waist, because you will look to blame everybody else for why you've had failures in your life. Have any of you ever blamed anybody for something in your life? Okay. Instead, and so as a result, when someone offers you higher perceptions, like coincidences are really meaningful, there are many paths to healing. Healing meaning healing patterns that deal with the breakdown of your finances or your physical world or whatever, or why that part of your life has in fact disintegrated according to a higher level of reasoning. It may just have been time, but from your perception of human reasoning. You say, I'll determine the time. You know, one of the richest things a nun said to me, was, this was right before I graduated from college. And the college I went to was also the mother house of a group of nuns. And they had a beautiful chapel. They still have it, right? So I liked praying in that chapel. And shortly before graduation, my senior year, I was in there, and Sister George was coming out. And she was short, but don't kid yourself. Right? She was a powerhouse. And George, I always thought George was sort of a half a quart short until I realized this woman had a quality of spirit in her like I had never seen before. I mean, you'd see her in the spring smelling flowers, and she'd go into ecstasy. I always thought she didn't have a mind, but she didn't, but it was the right mind not to have. All right. So she, anyway, she comes out of the chapel, and she says, oh, Carolyn, you know, it's student graduation, and you know, we make that kind of chit-chat. And then she says, what are you going to do after you graduate? Do you have any plans? I pulled out this list. Well, first, I'm going to start with winning the Pulitzer Prize, then go on to the Nobel, and I'm dead. I'm going to live in Europe. I want to be an investigative news reporter. I want to do this. I want to do that. And she looks at me, and she starts laughing, and she says, do you know how to make God laugh? And I thought, weren't you listening to me? And she said, tell him your plans. Okay. So, all right, and then there are more than the five senses. You see, this physical reality likes to work with five senses because if it's tangible, then you know you can maneuver it. But the closed mind is such a limited object because it's like carrying dead weight that continues to look for a reason that you won't see. And you know why you won't see a logical reason? Because a logical reason won't help you. The heavens set up circumstances for us, not so that we can find the logical way out, but so we will require the illogical. It's the nature of divine paradox. You're praying for guidance. Watch how the mind works in the guidance center. You pray for guidance. Do you honestly think for one moment that guidance is going to come in a logical form? A letter? A new credit card? Do you really think that the gods work that way? No. Heaven will always give you an illogical form of guidance. And I'll tell you the way heaven speaks. It works in paradoxes. What looks small is really big. What looks big is really small. I.e., the proverbial, the strength of a mustard seed can pull down a mountain. If you really understood what strength is. Okay? So you look at what the power of the open mind is, and you see that the open mind recognizes that coincidences are not only meaningful, they're messages. So the next time you're in a situation where you think, I'm really wondering what's happening here, or should I do this, or should I do that? And you walk around and you bump into someone who says, I thought you should move to New York. I was just talking to someone and you were just thinking, should I move to New York? Now, if you have a rational mind, you'll blow that off. But if you have an irrational mind, you'll sit down and think, I've just had a synchronistic event. Someone's talking to me. Look alive, look alive. And you begin to say, here it is, I'm getting a message. The guidance center's on. Start looking for illogical things. Don't even consider looking for logical. There are many paths to healing. Don't just look for the obvious. Look for the ridiculously unobvious. Okay? Where you can stop measuring what's effective by whether or not you can lift it up or taste it. Instead, you realize, it would be very effective for me just to literally do this, walk, talk. You know what I do when I feel the worst? I play the 60s music. I love the music from the 1960s. It reminds me of very, very, very happy times in my life. I love the lightheartedness of the music. And so it absolutely feels, I love that rhythm. I love the Beatles. So it works. That's one of the ways. For other people, they say, let's go into the country. Leave me alone. Put on the 60s. And that works for me. You want to ask yourself, again, we're going to go into what you ask yourself to figure out what you've invested your chakras in, your energy, your circuits. And that's, are you more rational or irrational? You know how you want to know? Yeah. You ask yourself, do I need details before I make a move? And if so, what kind of details? Do I need to know all the financial paper? Do I need to know who's on first base? What do I need to know before I'll make a move? Do I need rational information, or is irrational hunch enough? I'll tell you something just to tell you. I'm just going to mention this. Do what you want with it. But the gods always give you a risk and a no-risk proposition. If I were you, I'd take the high risk. Always take the biggest risk. And I'll tell you something else that will never, ever make sense to your rational mind, but here it goes. What really counts is not the road you take. It doesn't matter if you go left or right. It doesn't matter. What matters is the reason why you made the choice you did. Because if you're supposed to accomplish X, either road will get you there. What matters is the reason you chose the road you did. And if you decided to choose a road because it looked safe and all the things that requires, what you've chosen is the road of no faith. Okay? And if you decided, all right, I'm taking a risk, my ball's in your court, I'm going, you've chosen the route of faith. And in that route, you can expect one synchronistic experience every 3 hours. You can expect help out of nowhere. You literally have the power to sit down one evening and say, all right, God, you listen to me. I got a payroll to make on Friday. I've got this, I've got that. So what I need is 3 synchronistic acts and possibly 1 miracle. I'm going to bed. Right? I got to tell you that. You don't have to pray 3 times for the same goal. So I remind you again and again and again, please take this advice to heart. Take it to heart. Got the map? Take it to heart. You've got to squeeze past your will because you've got to convince your 5th chakra to have the courage to make totally irrational choices. But remind yourself every single day that it's not the rational choice that counts. And I'm not telling you to go out there and do stupid things. I'm telling you to look alive and that you're going to be offered a risk and a non-risk. And what you need to do is not evaluate what's on the outside, but whether or not you have courage on the inside. Now, what you want to ask yourself are those type of details. We're going to go into the 7th chakra, which is the upper level, as it were. This I love to refer to as your grace bank account. This is where you store your prayers. Isn't that a nice way to think of it? And this is where prayers for you by others are stored. Isn't that a lovely way to think of it? This is where you transfer the circuits of your own energy to others that you are praying for. And this is where when you go into contact, meditation, you don't even have to go into meditation. Why do we have to put our contact with God in such a tight parameter? This is where you receive grace constantly. You don't only and always have to be in the state of meditation. You just have to breathe. This is where your life force, your prana comes in. And every thought you have, every single thought you have, and it can be its own act of grace, which is why it's so, the journey of consciousness is the journey of being conscious, becoming conscious of exactly the ideas you give your energy, your grace over to. Think of the energies you support, the thoughts you support, as gracing them, as to whether or not you'll give your grace. Grace, then, you can think of as your blessing. Think of it as whether or not you'll give something your blessing. So you can think of it that this is the center of mysticism. This is the center where you enter into that high voltage, visionary, mystical connection with the divine. This is high voltage intuition. It's way past intuition. This is intuition for we ordinary mortals. OM for short. Okay, get it? That's the high voltage visionary power that is given to others. Given, you don't develop this. This you are anointed with. Okay? You develop yourself to be a vehicle for this, but whether or not you get anointed is, I assure you, not your choice. This is the center through which that high-powered spirituality comes through that moves others and mountains. The teachers that have had it, the quality of a teacher like Jesus, or Sai Baba, or numerous other teachers that I can mention who have been able to make contributions to our culture, to our global culture. The Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, people whose connection, Nelson Mandela, dare I put, to me he's in this category. These are people whose heart-mind connection is well beyond human energy. They are connected to God. I shouldn't say a God, but I was going to say the God force directly. Now, when a person experiences, what role does faith play in this? This is the center where you have your faith crises. Right? This is the center. This is the center where, when you ponder questions like, for what purpose was I born? If you ask those questions from below the waist, there's not much that's going to happen to you. But if you ask them from above the waist, this is the difference. So you're asking yourself from below the waist, I wonder why I'm down here. I wonder for what purpose I was born. And your angel's sitting there on the couch, flipping through, watching CNN. This again, just flipping through. And then comes the day where you ask the question from the 7th chakra. And you say, I mean it. What am I doing here? Am I supposed to be of service? And now your angel goes whoosh, off the couch and says, all right, let's go. Now we're going to work. And your angel pulls out your file and says, all right, let's do it this way. We're going to start by redoing the bottom half of your life. Okay, now, we'll start with where you live. I want you to move. And I want you to, we'll start with moving. I want you to move to a whole new state. And all of a sudden, you're possessed by this notion to get out of where you are. And then your angel says, oh, and while you do it, I want you to let go of the job you're in. This is the wrong occupation for you. So your angel says, are you going to do it, or shall I get you fired? Which way do you want this? Right? And of course, once that thought starts entering your mind, you don't want anything to do with it. You try to shut it off, shut it off. But your angel says, I'm giving you 2 months to act on this, otherwise I'm taking over. So your job begins to disintegrate more and more and more through your 5 senses. You can see it. How can you not? They moved your desk out. They sold your chair. There is no job left for you. So you decide, all right, then you're done with that. Now you've got that part of your life taken care of. And your angel says, okay, now let's move up. 2nd chakra. I want you to leave the relationship you're in. This is not the right partner. I'm going to have a 7th chakra partner, so you get rid of your 3 chakra partner. And you say, you hear it, you feel it, but you start shaking it off like a piece of lice, you know what I mean? And it's not going anywhere. So your angel says, look, I've had it with you not listening to me. I'm going to arrange so that you have a dinner someplace and you're going to run into him, her, with somebody else, okay? Because you haven't been listening to me. We didn't have to do it this way, but you wouldn't listen. So the next thing you know, you see your soon-to-be ex-mate with this other person. And then your angel says, all right, now, in order to recover from these, I want you to do the following things. We're going to have to change your habits. You are to change your nutritional program. I want you to get into exercise. I want you to deal with your addictions. And I want this now. Move it. And then you start doing all this. You start with the yoga. You start with, your whole life. But what you're doing is you're preparing for ascension. You're preparing for ascension so that you really can work in this other area of your energetic system in a high enough way to where you can work from the visionary energy that comes into all of us, not so that you see huge visions, but so that you can live beyond the state of illusion. And that makes your life a visionary experience. And that's enough. If you can just enjoy a sample of that quality. I'm going to give you a quote to think of that T.S. Eliot said. He said, we're not here to take, and we weren't born to indulge. We were born to kneel. Okay. Now, the lack of faith, quite frankly, I'm not sure there's a worse experience. If I had to list the worst experience that there is to live a life without faith. I mean, I can't imagine anything worse. Think of it in a tiny molecule form. Imagine that you lost faith that this flashlight would work again on your next trip into the basement. You realize how nervous you'd be from that? Now try living a life without faith. Think of it as though all of your circuits of energy are pouring into you and falling right out. They have absolutely no direction because you don't have a sense of what faith is, what you can put faith into. You don't trust anything. Everything scares you. Absolutely everything scares you. And so you picture yourself like this, and I think when you have faith, you cannot not have faith. It's not possible. But when you don't have faith in a positive way, you will automatically have faith in a negative way. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you've got to channel this energy. If it doesn't go into something positive, it's going to go into the fact that there isn't something positive. You're going to have faith in that. It is a damaging situation. And it goes for you too. When you don't have faith in something, I want you from now on to remember you are now channeling it into some form of the absence of faith. You're draining yourself. It's one of the quickest ways to harm yourself. And how can you ever heal if you're living life itself without faith in what life is, which is a regenerative process? All right. So keep this, I want you to hold this image in your mind, that the Grace Bank account, your capacity to pray, I don't even care if you pray like this, and neither does God. Not that I have dinner with God every night and he talks to me, but the divine source, it doesn't matter. Even if every day you say the divine source, you confuse me constantly. I cannot figure out how you work. At least you make contact. You make conscious contact. You don't even have to make peaceful contact. Scream at the gods, but make some kind of contact. And then just use this image, that there's prana coming in, and as you make contact, have any sense of gratitude. Don't always pray for your problem solution. Stop living in the school of charm that God is a mediator between you and a bad life on this planet. Stop praying like a stuffologist. God, give me stuff. God, protect my stuff. God, can I have more stuff? God, is my stuff sleeping with someone else's stuff? You know, stop praying like a stuffologist. Begin to realize that you can also express gratitude. You could say, thank you, Lord, for giving me. Thank you, God. Thank you, Divine Source, for letting me learn what I did today. Whether that learning was positive or negative. Thank you for showing me another area where I have to concentrate myself. Thank you for showing me another area where I have to get my spirit back, because if you showed me that, that means I can get my spirit back. That I'm ready to get my spirit back. You don't show me a recipe and not give me the way to cook it. That's ridiculous. Learn to pray consciously. Get out of the stuffology school of prayer. And learn to visualize the power of that grace bank account, that you're really surrounded by that. And as you breathe, you're surrounded by that. And don't be afraid to share grace with others. I'm going to tell you another favorite story of mine, because it's just so powerful, about a woman who suffered a car accident, and this was in England, and she had a near-death experience. And I love near-death stories. You know, I always frequently say that I lived with one of the men who did the majority of research on near-death experiences, and I really did attend parties where I was the only one who hadn't died. But anyway, she had this near-death experience. She's hovering over her body, and she can hear what the other responses are in the cars behind her. And she can hear people say, oh, this is just what I need, is to be late for my appointment, and this is just what I need. Any one of you ever do that? This is just, I don't need this, and this. But out of the fourth or fifth car, she sees this stream of light pour out and then get returned to her corpse, to her body, to this smashed up human being. And she thought, what's going on in that car? Boom, that quickly. She's hovering next to this woman who had entered the state of prayer for her, directing some of the grace from her bank account over to this woman who had just had the accident. So she got down the license plate number. And when she was recovered, she showed up on the front porch of that woman with literally with a basket of flowers and said, thank you. This is the power of that center of your body. You need to learn to use it with that kind of consciousness. Now, you want to ask yourself questions. You want to ask yourself, do you believe in guidance? You ask yourself that. But if you do believe in guidance, how do you expect it to come to you? Are you looking for rational guidance or irrational? And what's more is, are you prepared to respond to guidance if you get it? Or do you want guidance on your own terms? And if so, sit down with yourself and figure out what are the terms. I did this in one of my workshops. I love this story. And I said to everyone, all right, what terms do you want God to contact you on? I mean, exactly what do you want? And this one person said, this woman, God bless her, spoke honestly. And she said, well, I like a lot of time off. And I'm really not interested in going back to work because, you know, I have a nice routine for myself set up. I get up around 9:30 in the morning, and I like my morning walk, and I paint through the afternoon because I know that I'm going to be I know I have a career in art. And I like to read a lot in the afternoon, and then my husband comes home, and, you know, we have dinner, and we talk, and sometimes we go out for a walk. And I'm not really but, you know, I really believe that I think God should direct me in what art I should paint. And I'm looking at her. You know, and it's so difficult for me to not, you know, say something direct to a person like that. But I thought, well, and I said, well, you let me know if God
tells you how to become the next Van Gogh, won't you? And, you know, you have to take a real good look. If the way, in fact, you pray and the way you ask for guidance is truly guidance on your own terms. Because then you are really going to come to realize that the God you want to know is a very conditional God. All right? And that you want to take a look at as well, because if you wonder exactly what guidance is, and you realize real guidance, the kind of guidance that comes fast and furiously, is the kind of guidance that only a person who has no conditions can receive. Which is why I think we look at mystics or spiritual yogis and realize we're looking at people who have no restrictions. You want to ask yourself, do you feel a connection to God? Pay attention to, become conscious of what are the spiritual truths you live by. What do you really believe in? What are these patterns of God? What do you want God to be like? What do you want your spiritual life to be like? Ask yourself these questions. And don't just ask them, you know, like once and keep rolling with the ball. Some of these questions you have to go back to, sometimes on a daily basis, which is what do I trust? What don't I trust? What am I thinking today about God? Do I do this? Do I feel very positive about God when things are going my way and very negative? Do I think God is deaf when things aren't? Do I have a movable portrait of God? Or can I hold the position that God is a compassionate, loving, guiding force no matter what's happening in my life? And that everything that's happening in my life is for a reason. That is a tough one to hold on to, but I suspect that that's probably the truth. I have a deep sense of faith. I truly believe that when you pray, you get guidance. That you don't have to repeat your prayers all the time because God's not deaf. That when you ask for help, it's in there in the blink of an eye. That you have to let go of the way you think help is going to come to you. That everything has a purpose in your life, even if you can't see it. That every relationship has a purpose in your life, even though that purpose may hurt a great deal. When people say to me, oh, now let me see, I've just met somebody who has the same wounds as I do, and we're wound mates and we're soulmates. And I want to say, when you get out of here, I'll tell you who your soulmate is. Tell me the one person who has caused you the most pain in your life, and that is your soulmate. Because it's the person who has expanded your soul the most. Well, I believe all of these things are really true. I believe that there are so many deep spiritual teachers in our history and in the world now who are that are trying to teach us that the only real meaning of this life is to learn that life is only for spiritual development. And there is no other meaning. There is no other meaning. And I think that's a frightening thing because we come from a long, long tradition that separates our physical life from this spiritual life. That if we're going to choose spiritual development as our priority, we therefore must abandon physical life. I think that, I know that as we make the transition to this next culture, to this energetic culture that we are making now, I'm not talking about anything that's 2,000 million years in the future, I'm talking about now, that we will merge these two and recognize that the genuine spiritual path that we're on now, well, I don't want to say genuine, that the next step of evolution within the spiritual path is the merger of our spirit with our physical body, and living then within in a simultaneous harmony with the power and the energy that flows through both. And I believe that's where we're going. The last thing I want to share with you is the significance of doing a daily personal inventory. I can't emphasize enough how
crucial this is to your health and to your healing process. And again, in terms of the journey of consciousness, this is what it's about. Figuring out where you've left your spirit every day. What I've found as a very effective shortcut is to work with what I call the 7 sacred truths. These are the manner in which I present the truths, which I believe to be universal. I put them in my own language. And I think they do represent what we would call universal truth. And so I've lined them up in 7. And what I would say is that just go through these every day. They're a very quick and truthful shortcut as a way of evaluating and analyzing where your energy is. And as you say these to yourself, you're going to ask some questions like, all is one. It's a primary truth. Think about that. That's a tribal truth. It's your primary truth. And then close your eyes and ask yourself, did I have a prejudicial issue today? Did I lose my thought or lose my spirit in any version of tribal warfare? Whether that version was verbal or lose it in my thoughts. Was I harmful to another person because of the tribe they represented? You ask yourself these types of energy, these types of energetic thoughts, because you realize you've just invested part of your precious life force into supporting that kind of negativity. And I want to tell you something else. You even want to look at it. You know, there are many wonderful groups that are doing a lot on behalf of the earth, like the environmental groups that form ecological tribes as such. But if you contribute energy to these groups that is a hostile kind of energy, like we'll get those people who are doing this to our planet, you're waging war and you're actually helping them out. You're giving them fuel. You're giving the other side bullets to shoot us with. Instead, you got to rise above the waist. And you got to say, all right, you're going to shoot me with a bullet, I'm going to shoot you with love. Let's see who wins. And not love in the emotional sense, but in the compassionate sense that says this is a natural process of the evolution of life. And these people are evolving. I had to go through that stage. Who knows how many trees I killed? Give people room to evolve. Okay? This is also the part of your body that connects you, when you look at all is one truth, to all of nature. Feel the positive energy of nature come into you. Feel if, in fact, you're living in a balanced way with your family, with those that are in the closest circle to you, in your community. Feel the energy of what would be your tribal connection. Energy coming into your field, energy going out. Learn to feel this energy. This is what consciousness is about. You feel your energy system first, and then you take a check of how strong your physical body feels. You want to learn to make this connection at all times. Then you move into the second chakra, which, now as the chakras move, remember all is one is the large group one, and then it becomes the one-on-one connection, and the truth is honor one another. And in the work of honoring one another, you ask yourself if you've lost, it's not just honoring one other person, it's the issues that a one-on-one relationship represent with one another. So you ask yourself, have I lost my energy over financial issues today? Over a need to control somebody else? Have I lost my power over an act of vengeance? Feeling envious about someone? How much power am I giving over to that? And then when you ask yourself these questions, take time to actually feel the energy flow through you. I think this is where a wonderful practice like yoga comes in. You breathe in your prana and just look for the holes. Where are they? Like looking through, what is that called? Swiss cheese. Look at where you're leaking your power. How much, how fast, how strong, what are the consequences? Do you have an addiction? All right. What are they and how fast are you losing your power to those? Pay attention to this dynamic of energy because you want to keep this in check. This is how you sense continually. Do this every day. What have I invested my energy into that's negative? And then you want to reverse it. And you want to say, what positive energy is coming back to me? Can I feel the energy being sent to me from people who love me? Can I feel the support of other people? We are so accustomed to focusing our attention only on negativity and loss that we don't even know what it's like to recognize positive energy. And not only that, we're uncomfortable receiving it. And when you're in that situation, how in the world can you heal? Do you understand how totally ridiculous healing is to someone who is uncomfortable with positive energy? You've made yourself a vehicle that can only withstand barbed wire going through it. And when someone sends silk, you freeze. You've got to be able to recognize when loving, positive energy is being sent into your system as well, so that you can feel the energy of appreciation and you can allow it to come into your system. Okay? Honor oneself. This, of course, obviously, when you take a look at evaluating this truth, you got to ask yourself, do I like myself? Did I feel confident today? If not, where did I lose strength? Did I have any, did I criticize someone today, or was I criticized by someone? Work with that truth. Ask yourself, did I feel, did I operate within my sense of integrity? Did I follow my honor code? You ask yourself, and this, when you get used to this, it moves like this. It moves as fast as it gets. In the beginning, you have to sort of pay more and more conscious attention to, but pretty soon it becomes such an automatic language that when you're out in the field, as it were, the moment you're in a situation where you're about to lose power because you're about to dishonor your honor code, boom, you see it. It goes this fast. It actually happens that fast, as if you've pushed up an option, a choice that says, be mindful of what you're doing here. It's no longer unconscious. You become incredibly conscious. The third one. The fourth one is love is divine power. That's almost self-explanatory. You live in this belief of love, so you got to ask yourself, did I act through love? Did I dwell on my heartaches today or in the health of my heart? Did I appreciate how much love I could carry in myself or how much love was taken from me because of my past life experiences? Do I keep draining that? Do I dwell in being unforgiving? Do I feel like someone should forgive me first before I even budge on them? Do I enjoy not being forgiving because it gives me clout with somebody else? Ask yourself these questions. How much energy am I losing over this? Do I simply not want to forgive because it's serving my purpose in some way? Do I know what self-love is? What does that mean? Am I getting closer? Have I gotten past the stage where self-love means self-indulgence? Am I moving toward a level of true self-respect? You move through that truth, all right? Then ask yourself to consider, what does it mean to surrender my personal will to the divine? And again, you ask yourself, am I praying with a private agenda? Am I praying with conditional surrender to God? Do I really want to surrender my will, or am I still caught up in the illusion that I'm in charge of my own life? Do I speak honestly with people? Have I made choices today that reflect what I believe my purpose in life is? Have the choices I made supported my spiritual life or interfered with it? And literally at that point, you want to close your eyes and you want, with every one of these, you want to add the thought, I'm calling my spirit back. I am choosing consciously to retrieve my spirit, to call my spirit back. Act in a conscious way, even if you don't feel that energy come in instantly. Act in a conscious way to say, I'm calling my spirit back. I will not allow my spirit to leave my body that easily anymore. And breathe it in, breathe it in. And at first, I'm telling you, you won't necessarily feel this visionary electrical charge pour through you. Because part of the process of getting your energy back is becoming disciplined enough to stick with a practice. You don't earn the degree by attending one class. All right, you got to work for it. You got to work for it. And with every year that passes, you get stronger and stronger, and pretty soon you develop a fluency in it. You move to the next one, which says, seek only truth. This is a delicious one to live by, because you ask yourself again and again and again, do I believe things that are true or truth? Do I make up things in my mind that serve my journey in this lifetime, or do I really live by that which is truth? Do I judge others? Do I send my energy into harsh judgment of other people? Have I decided what's best for someone's life because it suits me? Am I releasing my energy in that way? Do I honor others by being able to honor the secrets they've asked me to hold for them? Do I literally live by situations in which I can see the struggling of other people and I'm able to pray for them in a clear, open way without using, how do I say, the blockage of my intellect to decide they deserve this? Am I able to transcend my sense of what justice is and release it to the wisdom of God? That's a tough one, and you ask yourself that. At the same time, you ask yourself, am I open to new ideas, or have I become literally and metaphorically a blockhead? You know, where I don't want new ideas. Am I clinging to a tiny reality because it makes me feel safe? All right. Do I call myself open-minded, but in fact, I'm not? And I like new ideas to flow in at a certain speed, because the slower I keep them, the slower the slower I allow them in, the slower will be the changes in my life. You calibrate the speed at which your life changes by the speed with which you allow new thoughts in. Am I making sense to you? It's one and the same. So if you're afraid of fast evolving, if you're afraid to evolve fast, you'll slow down the speed with which you allow the new in and get rid of the old. You'll cling to the old even though you know it's not truth. But you'll hold on to it because it slows down how fast your car can go. Okay? Let's go into the seventh. Live in the present moment. Dump the garbage every day. Evaluate, am I carrying something in me that I don't need to have anymore? Am I holding on to old baggage? Am I carrying the dead with me? What form of the past am I still holding on to that I need to let go of? And you evaluate that, even if the past was 2 hours ago. If it happened a minute ago, it qualifies as past time. But if you go back 2, 3, 5, 20, 80 years, and you're still holding on to it, you need to have a long conversation with you. And when people tell me I incarnated, I had a lifetime 600 years ago and I'm still trying to resolve this, they expect me to applaud their revelation? And I'm looking at them 600 years and you're still working on this? I see it from quite the opposite. Because it's so preposterous. I don't celebrate that sort of nonsense with people. I say, get yourself into present time. Live fully in the moment. Why does that allow? That allows synchronicity. That allows your mind to go into matter, your ideas to go into the cooperation of your power of will, the power of the heart, and boom, hit the floor, hit physical reality. This is how mystics manifest instantly. They don't have any of their circuits in the past. They are powerfully and fully in present time. So that when they say, touch you and say heal, that electricity genuinely, it's the electricity of present time combined, because present time electricity, to become a vessel of present time is the same as becoming a fully faithful spirit. You are fully living by the truths. You have no part of your spirit left in the mausoleum of your life, any lifetime. And you are fully a vehicle for the divine, because the divine is a present time force. Okay? Do you spend quality time in prayer? I don't have to talk about quiet prayer. Do you spend time consciously relating your life to God? Are you angry with God? Do you have a whole notion of how you think God should talk to you? Never mind the conditions under which you will evolve, but your impression of what God is and what God should be. Then, for the fun of it, ask yourself to know, did anything synchronistic happen to me today? Did anything that remotely look like guidance happen to me today? And if it did, what do I think it should mean? Should I just recognize that I'm being put on alert that I'm about to receive guidance? Or do I interpret this? What do I do? Just leave it alone? Have fun with your relationship with the divine. Don't always think, in fact, rarely allow yourself to think, that the reason that guidance is always the forebearer of bad news. Okay, or the manner in which you're supposed to get out of something that hurts. Why can't we hold in our minds that our relationship with God can be a pleasure cruise? We don't. We hold in our minds that it's just the journey of pain, and that prayer is just to get out of one painful situation only to be in the next. So pay attention to where your energy is on a daily basis. This is exactly what it means to learn the skill of self-evaluation, to learn how to manage your energy system. This is exactly how you do it. You pay attention, you ask yourself questions, you go into a self-evaluative process every single day. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes, and you'll begin to recognize when that energy is leaving your body, and you no longer will literally write it off as just one of those things, but you'll start saying to other people, excuse me for a minute, I'm losing some energy, I'll be right back. You'll take a step, you'll breathe it in, get back here, and you'll go back to your day, feeling centered instead of feeling like you're falling all over the place. All right, make this a daily practice. I want to close with a prayer that means the most to me in my own life. I hope it will mean something to you in yours. God, be in my head and in my understanding. God, be in my eyes and in my looking. God, be in my mouth and in my speaking. God, be in my tongue and in my tasting. God, be in my lips and in my greeting. God, be in my nose and in my smelling, inhaling. God, be in my ears and in my hearing. God, be in my neck and in my humbling. God, be in my shoulders and in my bearing. God, be in my back and in my standing. God, be in my arms and in my reaching, receiving. God, be in my hands and in my working. God, be in my legs and in my walking. God, be in my feet and in my grounding. God, be in my joints and in my relating. God, be in my guts and in my feeling. God, be in my bowels and in my forgiving. God, be in my loins and in my swiving. God, be in my lungs and in my breathing. God, be in my heart and in my loving. God, be in my skin and in my touching. God, be in my flesh and in my pining. God, be in my blood and in my living. God, be in my bones and in my dying. God, be at my end and at my reviving. Thank you.